Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome to the Daily Crow. Thursday, August the 3rd, 2023. Getting my months mixed up there. Hope you're all doing well. Again, Chris Phillips, your host of the Daily Crow, of the Spurs Up Show, as always. We've had a very, very busy morning with a couple of high-profile conversations, getting after it here on this Thursday. And it's a big Thursday as players report for South Carolina. Fall camp will get underway tomorrow, 9:20 a.m. The first practice will take place. So again, guys, a lot going on. Really exciting times. I see in the chat, Z Hudson, howdy from Somerville. Shout out to the Somerville Gamecocks out there. GA, Chase, Travie, Ben DeRosa, Hunter Kelly, Austin Lewis, Austin Gregory, Brendan M. checking in from Elkin, North Carolina on the way to Virginia. What's up? Braddock 843. Appreciate you. Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel, to be sure that your questions are answered there. Guys, we have got a jam-packed show for you here on this Thursday, of course. In our third hour, we have our Q&A Power Hour. We'll take your questions, your comments, your calls as well. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Of course, in our second hour, we've got Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate. Of course, we have a lot to talk about. I'm going to ask Mark Ryan about the tweet that he sent after Dylan Stewart committed. And just, here's the thing, guys. I'll set the expectations for that conversation. In no way is it my intent to get in some knockdown, drag-out argument and get in a shouting match. I really just want to understand where Mark's coming from. I want to give Mark the opportunity to explain and expand on his logic and his reasoning for when South Carolina picks up a big-time five-star commitment to the first place that he goes is to the Beamer versus Muschamp comparison. I just want to understand that. Anyways, we'll talk to Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate in the second hour. And then, of course, in our first hour here, we got an array of subject matter, array of topics we're going to jump into, guys. We called somewhat of an audible, kind of a surprise conversation for you all. Of course, the SEC opponent previews are in the books, but that does not mean, guys, that every now and then we won't have some special guest appearances, some quick conversations, what have you. We got a great one today to kick off the show coming up at 12:15. David Nuno of Tex Ags Radio. Tex Ags, they are the biggest, baddest entity when it comes to covering all things Texas A&M Aggies, all sports. We're going to talk a little Texas A&M football with David Nuno, as well as the South Carolina-Texas A&M matchup in College Station this season. Then we'll get into, we're continuing, guys, our position unit preview series. Excuse me. Our position unit preview series. We talk all things Gamecocks, tight ends. We'll get that conversation rolling. And of course, guys, over the next 2 days, we'll break down all things South Carolina's tight ends. Guys, for those in the Big Cock Club Discord, again, I don't know what's going on with my Discord or my Mac. It's not loading for some reason. So if I don't see your questions, your comments, whatever, in the Big Cock Club Discord, just know that I'm not ignoring you. For whatever reason, Discord is bugging on my Mac right now. Either way, guys, in the meantime, we got about 10 minutes or so until David Nuno jumps on. If you want to leave your comments, your questions, what have you. And I'll let you guys know what we've been up to, because some really exciting things this morning and over the last couple of days as well. First things first, you guys might recall, if not, I'll fill you in. The week of week 0. And let me give you the specific dates really quickly. The week of August 21st to 25th, there will be no TDC that entire week. We are headed out on the road to Montana to go see family. Obviously, again, I'll be out and about, will not be able to be here with you guys doing TDC again, going to see family. Actually cannot wait for the trip, truly, honestly, to disconnect and take one final getaway, if you will, before we really lock in for the grind of the 2023 college football season. With that being said, though, that does not mean there will not be content. That does not mean there will not be podcasts, specifically the podcast side of things. At minimum, that week, Monday through Friday, we will have special guest interviews, conversations, if you will, that will drop each day of the week that week, with some of the guests, by the way, being such as my guy Ty Richardson over at ESPN Arkansas, my guy Dave Shoemate over at Mach 10 Sports, Michael Bratton of that SEC podcast, et cetera, et cetera. We've got some others lined up as well. Really, really exciting times, really exciting stuff. By the way, shout out to Zach Hudson joining the Big Cock Club. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you, sir. And I think it's Zach. It just says Z Hudson. If I got the first name wrong, I apologize. But anyways, that week, guys, the podcast will continue to drop. We'll have some great conversations to get you ready for the 2023 college football season. And also, I think I'm going to pre-record some content as well because, as I told you guys, we're talking all things SEC football, SEC content. And so I may record some things before the fact talking week 0, Vanderbilt, Hawaii, some gambling for week 0 as well. So there will be plenty of podcast content that week, but just no TDC content. There will be no TDC that week. So appreciate you guys understanding. Thank you all so much for rolling with the punches. And again, that will really serve as the final break we have from the beginning of week 1 all the way up until the end of the season. So again, appreciate you guys' love, understanding, and rolling with the punches, but do not fret. Plenty of content coming your way that week. Also, this morning, we knocked out some great conversations, guys. Brandon Marcello, national college football reporter for 24/7 Sports, spoke to him this morning. I think we're going to drop that on Monday. I'm not exactly sure, but we've got a pretty wide open day in our first hour, just thinking because we will not do the position unit preview until Tuesday. So just thinking ahead, probably drop that convo Monday. Really, really good stuff. Also, guys, I jumped on with my guy, Stingray, Stephen Ray, and his co-host with Tide 100.9, the radio station down there in Tuscaloosa, to talk all things Gamecocks football and give a full preview of South Carolina's 2023 season. That conversation is going to air on August the 14th, I was told. So when it drops, of course, you guys will know. We'll share it across social media. And then, of course, we just jumped on with Inside the Gamecocks this morning for a fantastic convo as well. So, guys, things are rocking and rolling here on this Thursday, truly, as we get into the 2023 season. Fall camp is taking place as well. Really, really exciting stuff. Anyways, guys, leave your questions, comments, calls, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. We're also working with a couple of potential future business partners, a.k.a. 2 different sports books that I've reached out to. Again, we have prize picks for the prop plays, and those are awesome. But, we're going to be talking spreads. We're going to be talking over-unders. We're going to be talking anything and everything you can think of when it comes to gambling. I'm taking gambling content as more seriously, I'd say, than I ever have in my career doing TSUS. So, going to be a lot of fun. Things are rolling, guys. Again, appreciate you all, your love, support. I see John Edward. He says, Chris, are you going to challenge Mark Ryan? John Edward, you let me handle that. You tune in. You give your feedback. Hey, leave comments. I'm sure Mark Ryan would love to take some comments as well. But I'll say this. We're going to jump into a quick break to set up this interview with David Nuno of Texags, which, by the way, is going to be live. It's not pre-recorded. David Nuno is going to jump in here. John, have ruffled the feathers of some of those in the chat. So just be weary of that, John Edward, when you're interacting in the chat and what have you. Guys, speaking of, by the way, bump the break. We're not even going to do it because David Nuno if he gives the thumbs up, he's good to go. Okay, we're going to jump into this in just a second. Again, appreciate you all tuning in. Like I mentioned, we've been doing these SEC team previews. We already did talk Texas A&M, but we're going to keep the conversation rolling. We talk Gamecocks here, but love to talk SEC football, SEC sports. And, of course, this is a yearly opponent for South Carolina. And I'd say one of the most intriguing teams, not just in the SEC, but in college football entering the 2023 season. Let's bring him in here. David Nuno of Texags. He joins the show. David, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, very kind of you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to chit-chatting a little SEC football with you.
First things first, David, let folks know that are tuned in, maybe Gamecock fans, maybe they don't follow Texas A&M as closely, where they can find your work. Because obviously you guys at Texas and Tex Ags Radio, you guys do a fantastic job covering all things Texas A&M, not just football. It goes into baseball, basketball, really all the sports. So just give people an idea of who you are, what you do, and just kind of where they can find everything you guys are doing.
Yeah, well, I've been at Texas now for 2 years. I do the TV and radio show that we host here Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. And I really love doing it. I'm an Aggie. Been away the last, 20 years doing other stuff. I've done, I was a newscaster in Houston for a while. I've worked in the NBA, worked in the NFL, and I've had a very different path to get to where I'm at. But happy to be doing Aggie football because there's a few things to get my blood boiling and make me super happy, and that is certainly A&M athletics. But Billy and I, Billy Lucci is the face and the founder of all things Texas A&M, or Texags, I should say. He created this monster 20 years ago. He built this empire, and now we have a website, a TV show, a radio show. We do SEC specific shows, so it's just a one-stop shop. But really, with a focus on A&M, as we've learned in the SEC the last decade plus, it's that everybody hates everybody, but we all kind of have each other's backs, right? So that's kind of the way we roll here as well.
That's well said indeed. And again, David, let me just echo and say that I didn't realize it had been 20 years, but I've admired you guys' work from afar. You guys, again, do a fantastic job talking all things Aggies, but also shedding light on all things SEC. So let's start on kind of a different note, if you will. We all love rivalries. In a day and age of realignment, these teams are changing conferences. I find myself even gravitating more towards rivalry over realignment, but realignment is helping a rivalry in the case of Texas A&M, and Texas. That rivalry will return next year. I've heard a lot about it over the offseason. Of course, the Texas and Oklahoma questions came in hot at SEC Media Days. But, we talk Carolina-Clemson, and we know the bitterness of that rivalry. I mean, pure hatred. But give people some perspective on Texas A&M and Texas, what that game means, and because it's right up there with the best rivalries in college football, and it's honestly a darn shame it hadn't been played over the last couple of years.
Well, it's definitely a shame, but we got to a point where we didn't need it anymore, but we did, right? Like you get to a point where these kids that that intern for us here in the studio, like they don't know what it feels like to hate Texas, right? To absolutely hate and want them to lose. Like there's certain, like I'll give you an instance, like I kind of root for LSU and Bama and South Carolina and other situations. LSU would be our other real rival in the SEC, right? Like I root for them to win sometimes because it doesn't bug me as long as A&M gets that win. I want for Texas to lose every game that they play in by 50-plus points, right? That's just what every time. When they lose and they get and when they're embarrassed, just like they are with us, they may act like it's not that big of a deal, but they can't wait to make the App State jokes. And we can't wait to make the Kansas jokes, right? It's just part of the rivalry. Some of my best friends are Longhorns, by the way. The majority of them are great, but there's this social media component that has shown up in this rivalry where I see some of the worst in both fan bases, by the way, that just adds to it. Thanksgiving weekend always meant something. Like, my brother went to A&M. My oldest cousin went to A&M. I feel like I've been an Aggie my entire life because as a 7 and 8 year old, I was watching Aggie football. It meant something every Thanksgiving weekend, if it was the actual Thanksgiving day, the Friday after, whatever it would be. And that game, along with the bonfire and the proximity to the schools and fighting for the athletes in town, it means more than anything else. And look, I have a lot of respect for Texas OU. That is a huge rivalry. And I think the last 20 years, especially with the way OU kind of dominated the Big 12, and that it became even a bigger deal with the absence of A&M. But make no mistake about it. Come Thanksgiving weekend, if that's when we get to have it again, all eyes are going to be on what A&M and Texas mean. And it's the fighting for the recruits, fighting for the eyeballs, and fighting for legitimacy, where both programs really the last 20 years have shown moments, but not sustained moments.
Mm-hmm. David, speaking specifically on the Aggies, you look at what they've done on the recruiting trail over the past 4, 5, 6 years or so. I mean, really recruiting at a top 5 level. And of course, Jimbo Fisher was hired there, not just to win, but to win big. And so I look at this season after a disastrous 2022 in which Texas A&M was very, very young. That's evidenced by all of the returning production experience, what have you. It's interesting to get people's perspectives on the Aggies because you have a large party that says this is going to be the breakout year. They've got all these guys coming back. They've recruited at this high level. You've got this other party that says, I've been burned by Texas A&M too many times to put any stock. I don't believe in Jimbo. The Bobby Petrino thing's not going to work. The clashing egos. Give our audience an idea. Why do you think it clicks? If it does, let's say Texas A&M gets to 9-3. Let's say they get to 10-2, and they're right there with LSU and Bama, the top of the SEC West. What is it that clicked for Texas A&M finally to break through?
Forgive me for not having the exact stat on me, but over the last 10 years, I feel like A&M is the fourth best record in the SEC.
They have been very good since they joined. They have been very good, yes.
So there's that. Also, people forget 2020 actually did happen. Some people put that asterisk there. But last time I checked, the Los Angeles Lakers are still enjoying that championship. The last time I checked, the Dodgers are enjoying theirs. Alabama is enjoying theirs. So Jimbo has had success here. There was a 3 years of rising to that moment. And I think that they were unfairly left out of the playoff. But I get it. Like Notre Dame got in, the brand name. I get it. But I think A&M at that point was deserving. But they didn't get in. They followed up with a bad 2021. I had to get my years straight, right? 2021 was not good. You lose your starting quarterback who, at the time, we thought was the future of the program in Haynes King in game 2, drive number 2 against Colorado. I don't care who you are. Alabama was a different team without Bryce Young. Like, regardless if you think Haynes King was going to be good or not, and history now would say it just didn't work out at Texas A&M. He wasn't the right fit for this offense, and we weren't the right fit for him. And now he's at Georgia Tech. You lose your starting quarterback in week 2 of the season. It's going to hurt your program. Then you have Zach Calzada, who, by the way, got hurt during that season as well, and you didn't have any other backups to him. He wasn't what we expected him to be. You had other injury situations. You showed the brilliance against Alabama, but then you follow up with some poor losses against the Mississippi schools, right? So that happens. 2022 happens, and I think a lot of people focus on the Jimbo Saban fiasco. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys, everybody loves to poke A&M about the NIL stuff. Nobody has reported anything that is accurate when it comes to that about the actual financial figures. It is so much lower than people say and lower than a lot of other programs. It's ridiculous. But Sliced Bread had this thing. Jimbo and Nick had their thing. And then A&M follows it up with a disastrous loss to App State. So, like, you got all this momentum going in the south direction. You got injuries to your best playmaker in Anaya Smith. Your starting center, an all-SEC caliber starting center, plays in 4 games last year. Goes down in the Alabama game, but doesn't start the season, by the way. He's also a track athlete, so he missed all of spring. These are all excuses. It's not good enough. There's no doubt about that. But I'm giving you guys kind of the reasoning behind where some of the optimism was and why it fell out of favor and why we still see it. Look, I believe in Jimbo Fisher as a recruiter. He has been a great recruiter at Florida State and at Texas A&M. And I go back to that 2021 class where people are like, well, how did you get the number 1 greatest class of all time? That was a top 12 class just in the city of Houston. You think A&M recruits Houston pretty well every year? Yes, they do. Just in the city of Houston that year, that was a top 12 class. They beat Alabama with Walter Nolan and all these guys here, right? And they saw it happen. And there was a euphoria of that evening. I don't know how to explain it, but like I've been to South Carolina. On a certain night, things click and the recruits just buy in and go crazy, right? That game where they beat A&M. I thought that was a crazy atmosphere. So when people say, should we buy in A&M? They burned us too many times. I totally get it because as a fan of that program my entire life, they have burned me. But I do believe in Jimbo because I think Jimbo did look in the mirror and saw some areas where this program was suffering. And it was an obvious one, right? The offense suffered. The offense was not creative. They couldn't score points. Brings in Bobby Petrino. We can talk about that as a separate issue, but brings in one of the best offensive minds we've seen in college football the last 20 years, right? You're healthy. You've got 2 quarterbacks that you believe in. Max Johnson, for those who don't think there's a real quarterback race, Max Johnson's a really good quarterback. What he did at LSU was really good, right? He's a guy. Connor Wegman last year as a true freshman. 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, looked great, right? Like he looked excellent. So I'm throwing all these scenarios out for you to show why we believe this year can be a really good year. Do I think they're a 12-win team, an 11-win team? They have talent to maybe do it, but like as we all know in the SEC, LSU, Alabama, Arkansas, Texas A&M, like all these teams in the West, Ole Miss, they all play in these close games.
Mhm.
A&M, if they only scored 22 points a game last year, right? If they score 30 points a game, they're probably an 8, 9, 10 win team, honestly, because they lost so many 5 games by one score, right?
Mhm.
But Alabama played in those close games too, and they won a bunch of them. LSU played in them all year long. Hello, TCU made it to the college football playoffs, winning those one-score games. So if you believe in the youth and that 21 class growing up, if you believe in guys coming back for another year in Anaya Smith and Damani Richardson, and you think that Jimbo really looked in the mirror and made these changes and changed the offense, then why not believe in them? I understand the hesitation, but the talent is there. Nobody in the world predicted 5 wins last year. Most experts had them as a top 10 team. They fell royally short of that. They cannot have a third straight down year. They've got to have a bounce back year. I believe in the talent, and I think they've made the necessary changes. That's my long-winded answer of saying why I believe in them this year. How much I believe in them, I'm still trying to figure out.
David, how many times do you think you've been asked about the Bobby Petrino thing? I feel like that's like the number one question when it comes to the Aggies. And I'll let you expand on it, but I know it's the low-hanging fruit, but whether it works or doesn't, it is fascinating when you think about the fact that Jimbo hasn't been, I think somebody told me, he hasn't been an assistant coach since 2002 when he was at Auburn. Like, he hasn't shared any of those duties in the slightest way in the last 20 years or so. And now you bring in a guy in Petrino who's, take the off-field stuff out of the equation. He's one of the best offensive minds in college football of the modern era, I would say. And it's just going to be really interesting, that working dynamic of allowing Bobby to, really take full hold of it. Your just overall thoughts on that addition.
I look, I'm not worried until I need to be worried. Like, do you think Nick Saban meddles with the defense? Yeah, of course he does. Of course he does. No, I don't want that play. Do this. That's what head coaches do. Like, the thing that I think people are forgetting, Jimbo didn't go hire some like young hotshot coordinator. He hired a proven guy who didn't have to take a coordinator job, by the way. I know he was going to UNLV when the A&M thing seemed like it was going to fall out. But he went and got a guy that he trusts to lead the offense. I fully expect for Jimbo to be involved in the offense. He's too good of a brilliant mind. By the way, I don't think the play calling is as big of an issue as people think. I think play calling is an issue for a lot of teams, not just Jimbo Fisher, right? I think it's the creativity of offense, right? So that's all being decided right now. The kind of plays that they're going to run, the way they're going to look, the packages that they're going to run. And I tend to agree with Jimbo in this regard right here. It is about execution, right? John Stockton and Karl Malone, you knew what they were doing. They were doing the pick and roll. You couldn't stop it because they ran it to perfection. On a 3rd and 1, you've got freaking whatever running back you want to throw. They're going to get that 1 yard, but you know it's coming. They find a way. So it is about execution. Do I think that it could potentially be a problem? You could say that about anybody. You could say that about any new coach and new coordinator because you don't know the working dynamic. Jimbo has said repeatedly that he is friends with Bobby, that their relationship goes way back, and he kind of handpicked him. He was a little vague, obviously, at SEC Media Days. Did follow it up on the not the Brando show, on the
Feinbaum.
Feinbaum, thank you. I don't know why I was thinking Brando. He was supposed to be on the show today. But he was on Feinbaum. He followed up, and he did say, no, he's going to be calling plays. But I fully expect for every once in a while, a head coach who's won a national championship, who it's his baby and has had a hard time sharing that to at times meddle. I'm not worried about it. Do you score points? Were people complaining about the offense in 2020? The offense didn't score a lot of points in 2020, but they were winning games. Just win games. Everything else takes care of itself.
Now, David, when you look at that matchup specifically with South Carolina, I was just taking a look at the schedule and where it falls. It's really interesting with the Texas A&M perspective, coming off of that bye week, and the stretch of games too, going into that, because you've got Auburn, Arkansas, and Arlington, but then you have Alabama at Tennessee. Then there's that bye week, and then you host South Carolina. And of course, the Gamecocks snapped the streak, had never beaten Texas A&M up until last year. And admittedly, David, I'll tell you that when I came into every season and I lock in predictions, picks, whatever, that was a game that I was just automatically putting an L next to, because I'm like, until South Carolina wins it, I don't know that it's actually possible. Of course, they've never won in College Station at Kyle Field, one of the toughest places to play in college football. That, to me, for Texas A&M, if they're going to hit, say, that 9-win mark or more, that looks like a must-win to me. I mean, a home game, SEC game, obviously, but at the home field in that stretch, What say you about that matchup specifically? You know, South Carolina was able last year to use special teams, defense. You know, people forget the start of that game. It wasn't just the kickoff return for a touchdown. Literally the first drive A&M had, it was an interception, and they were off and running, and A&M was never able to recoup, although it was a one-score game at the end. Your just overall thoughts on the South Carolina matchup and the importance of it for Texas A&M season?
Well, first off, I have so much respect for Shane Beamer. I love his personality. I love his style. I think he's building something very unique there, and he gets it. I go to specifically that game. Things could not have started worse, right? Like the game was basically over at the 8th minute, right? It felt over, and yes, A&M had their chances. What I'll say about that is, as bad as A&M played in that game, they had a chance to win. They had an opportunity. Now, if you believe they had a legit opportunity or not, but losing by 6 and you have a chance with the ball in the 4th quarter to potentially take the lead, they had an opportunity. Haynes King got hurt in that game, was not really good. Connor came in, did okay, but it was too late, like too little, too late. Had they made the change earlier, I think things could have been different. You can't start off a game on the road in the SEC and fall behind 17 points. I don't remember his exact stats, but I don't remember Spencer being fantastic in that game, but he caught steam afterward. All that being said, yeah, that game's important. It's super important. I have a lot of respect for what South Carolina has been able to do with Shane. But I think it goes deeper than that. I think A&M's season, regardless of what you think about what happens with Alabama and with Tennessee, they got to win their home games, including South Carolina. They got to find a win against Mississippi schools, right? So that's right there, 3 games that I think are your pivotal games. If you struggle against Bama and Tennessee, that some people think that they will, you better win the games you're supposed to win, and you better win the Mississippi games. And I think A&M at home with the talent they have should beat South Carolina. Nothing to do it. I think we're going to learn a lot about South Carolina. And even if they take a step back this year, which I'm not saying that they will, but if they do, I still think their trajectory is very high for what they're building there. You got to win your home games. You got to win Mississippi. To me, that determines if they're a 9-win team.
David Nuno of Texags, no more East and West moving forward, so we'll see just how often South Carolina and the Aggies face off. We know they'll do so in 2024. Last thing, Dave, before I get you out of here, just really quickly, I've never been to College Station, never been to Kyle Field, have heard many things about the 12th man. For those of us who have not been, explain what makes it such a special environment. I guess besides the fact there's 100,000+ screaming Aggies in that stadium, but you watch it on TV, and I know that probably doesn't do it justice, but you watch it on TV and you can tell it's one of the more special venues in college football.
All right, so I assume your audience is very much like mine, not into soccer. I'm into soccer, right? Like, I just assume SEC fans aren't really watching European soccer. But there's a charm to a European soccer match that I think is matched in college football. Then you take it a step even deeper with A&M. And the reason I say that is, A, I'm biased, it's my school, but there is a elegance to Kyle Field. There's a politeness in the crowd. Like I'm telling you, like I know that there's knuckleheads in every fan base. I recognize that, but Aggies are really nice. There is that, but they're also really loud. They're really passionate. There's traditions. Coming to Kyle Field, it used to matter and needs to matter again, and it does matter at moments. That's one thing I'll give Jimbo, and one thing he's got to get better at too is the big games. All the big games he's coached in, they're games. Very rarely does Jimbo he'll lose some big games, but very rarely does he get blown out in big games, although it has happened. Hello, LSU 2019. But Jimbo coaches his teams up, right? And against Alabama, against LSU. We've seen it against Clemson a couple years ago, that one year that they took on the number 1 school 4 different times. So, but when you come to Kyle Field, there is an intimidation factor that shows up, especially in the big games, with how loud it gets, how entrenched the fans are, how close to the field that they are, that opposing fans feel it. And was it South Carolina that actually had fans talking about at SEC Media Day? I think it was South Carolina talking about like the impact of Kyle Field. And I might be wrong here. It's just a different vibe that you can't explain unless you're there. And then when you're there, you're like, I get it, right? Like watching a movie on Netflix is cool. Watching a movie in like a Dolby, whatever they call it, the sound system, like, there's a different kind of vibe to it. And that's what it's like at Kyle Field. There are other places that are great. I honestly, every SEC stadium I've been to is different than the other conferences. I went to a lot of Big 12 games before. Like, it's just different. It's cool there. It's not like an SEC stadium. And I think the same thing about A&M, taking it up even a step bigger.
David Nuno of TexAgs does a fantastic job talking all things Aggies, SEC, and more. David, appreciate you taking the time, man. Let's definitely do this again soon for sure.
I appreciate it. Hey, can I just read this? Because I just jumped on your chat. Austin, he asked me a question. He says, David, this time last year, everyone was accusing the Aggies of illegal utilizing NIL. Now that everyone is following suit, what do you attribute A&M finding success with NIL before anyone else? I think everybody was scrambling 2 years ago to figure out how to do it the right way. A&M was recruiting before NIL. And Jimbo Fisher is a elite recruiter. He's done it at every stop. A&M has traditionally done very well recruiting no matter who the coach is. Now, have they been top 5 good? No. They'll venture in there. But they've been a top 15 type of recruiting place. It's Texas. Like the state of Texas, there's enough talent to get a really good team. My thing is getting in this new world of NIL, it's not about the top 5 classes, although you want that. It's about getting the right top 5 classes. It's about getting the right. There have been a couple guys from that. By the way, most of the 21 class is still here, a significant portion. And nobody who left was a legit starter, right? Anthony Lucas had a chance to be a really nice player. But Smoke Bowie, who left, is no longer with Georgia. Chris Marshall, who left, who was a problem, is no longer with Ole Miss. It's about getting the right guys, guys that buy into what you're doing, buy into the program, and buy into winning a certain way. And that's what I think A&M has to, and I think they've gotten back to it, but they have to recruit those type of players with the aid of NIL.
Well said, David. Hey, man, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time. Let's definitely do it again soon, and make sure everybody tuned in. You go check out David Nuno and all things TexAgs, where you can find it. David, appreciate you taking the time, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, man, we'll get you on my show soon, all right?
Let's do it, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Great stuff, guys. David Nuno of TexAgs Radio, TexAgs, again, Billy Lucci and the gang. They do a fantastic job talking all things Texas, A&M Aggies, SEC football, and sounds like we might be able to make an appearance on the show, and I'm sure that week of the South Carolina A&M game, we'll do some crossover stuff with them as well. Guys, we're going to jump into our first break of the day. On the other side, we're going to get into our position unit preview series as we begin to talk Gamecocks tight ends heading into 2023 season. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, August the 3rd, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Let me once again say thank you to David. I may have mispronounced the last name, by the way, Nuno, I believe. I said Nuno. I believe it's Nuno. I apologize to David. I see him, by the way, in the YouTube chat going back and forth with some of you. Love to see that. Appreciate you guys being engaging during the conversation. And again, really looking forward to having David back on the airwaves and working with the Texags folks more in the season, talking SEC football, Aggies, Gamecocks, what have you, everything in between. Guys, of course, conference realignment has been a big topic of conversation over the last, couple of weeks. Certainly within the last week or so, it has come to the forefront. Our friend Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports, who, again, we chatted with this morning about this very topic, just tweeted, Washington has scheduled a special Board of Regents meeting for today at 9 p.m. Pacific time. So the wheels are turning. The Pac-12, as we know it, is evaporating. That is the best way to say it. That is the nicest way to say it. Guys, that being said, again, the position unit preview series continues. We wrapped up wide receivers yesterday. We're talking Gamecocks tight ends entering the 2023 football season. Top storylines that follow this group entering the year. Before we do, let's meet the tight ends that will grace the field for South Carolina this season. You've got Arkansas transfer Trey Knox, Western Kentucky transfer Joshua Simon, Florida transfer Nick Elksness, Maurice Brown II, Connor Cox, Reed McKeeska, Lucas Vosen, and Cameron Sandlin, who I understand, guys, has been working at running back. He's listed in the media guide as a tight end. So for the sake of the conversation, we included him with the tight ends. But when you look at this group, guys, the thing that jumps out, and as we dive into top storylines, this is a completely new look room from a season ago. I don't think there's a position group on this football team that looks so much differently than it did a season ago. When you factor in Jaheim Bell to Florida State, that was the big headliner. Nate Atkins to graduation, Trey Kenyon to medical retirement, and Austin Stogner going back to Oklahoma. It is a brand new room with brand new faces in it, and replacing the production from what you lose from a season ago is paramount. And I understand. And what I've noticed this offseason, we'll get more to this in just a second, but what I've noticed with the departure of Jaheim Bell, which it really wasn't shocking when he hit the transfer portal, but it was the nature of the exit, right? With the selling of T-shirts 24 hours before he announces his intentions to transfer, with the family actions over the course of the 2022 season, the back and forth with his mother and them being very outwardly vocal on their opinions on the way that South Carolina was utilizing him in the offense. And we all agree it was not a good job well done, obviously, by Marcus Satterfield. There's a reason he's no longer here. But it almost feels South Carolina fans are in a state of mind of wanting to win the breakup, right? Diminish the impact that Jaheim Bell had, diminish anything he meant to South Carolina football, when at this time a season ago, those wearing garnet and black were touting Jaheim Bell as one of, if not the best tight ends in the SEC and one of the most dynamic playmakers in college football. To put it in perspective, you look at what he did last year. The numbers read as follows. Jaheim Bell, 25 catches, 231 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He did not meet the expectations that Gamecock Nation set upon him. Was that his fault? Was it Marcus Satterfield? Was it a combination of the two? You then lose Austin Stogner, 20 catches, 210 yards, and a touchdown as well. I don't think Austin Stogner either really lived up to the expectations and hype that followed him when he came in from Oklahoma, when he joined his buddy Spencer Rattler. And then there was Nate Atkins, who by the end of the season became a fan favorite because of his one-handed catch in the Clemson game, which will go down in history, because of his emergence in the Tennessee game, and also, in the Notre Dame game. When you lost him, you really felt the impact of not having him on the field. But he finished last season with 13 catches, 168 yards on the season. But just a completely new look room. And does it lead to new results for South Carolina? It's going to be fascinating to watch. Now, as you look at the room, I mentioned, and the big headliner over the course of the offseason, as we know, the transfer portal giveth, the transfer portal taketh away. And while it took Jaheim Bell, it giveth Trey Knox, who was a very nice piece for the Arkansas Razorbacks during his time in Fayetteville. And he reunites with a guy in Justin Stepp that recruited him. Trey Knox started at the wide receiver position, then bulked up, put on weight, and moved to tight end. And Dabble Loggins as well, who, of course, is now the Gamecocks OC, and that was his position coach at Arkansas. Trey Knox enters this season and enters South Carolina looking for his best collegiate season yet. He was a guy that was targeted in the spring game. We got to see him with the football in his hands, and the hype and the buzz followed for the Gamecocks' shiny new toy at the tight end position. This is a big year for Trey Knox, though, because, guys, I was at SEC Media Days, of course, and was able to talk to some Arkansas folks and get their takes on things such as Stepp, Dabble Loggins, but also Trey Knox. Also got to talk to KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders. But, listening to the folks on the Arkansas beat, those who are really close to that program, talking about Trey Knox, the player. They obviously mentioned, hey, he provided a nice big body weapon at the tight end position for KJ Jefferson. But they mentioned that was a guy that never really had that breakout season that they were all looking for. And you go back and you look at his numbers, guys, the numbers tell the tale. And the stat that really stands out to me that our good friend Connor O'Gara of Saturday Down South brought up on his show months ago, but it stuck with me ever since. Factor this in when thinking about Trey Knox. Yes, he has the size. Yes, he has the agility. Yes, he's got the makeup. He's a dude that wins when he gets off the bus. But the productivity, for whatever reason, it hasn't followed. Trey Knox has not caught a touchdown against a Power 5 opponent since October of 2021. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. And so you just wonder now, does a new start, a fresh start at a different place, does that spell better results? Because, based off of what you see, based off the glimpses of performances he's had, that, it's in there, that he can be an all-SEC caliber tight end. But it's kind of like we talked days ago when talking about the wide receivers. There's some guys that entered their third or fourth or fifth year of college football, and you keep waiting on that breakout season. You keep waiting on them to pop. At some point, you have to accept they are who they are. And so I just wonder with a guy like Trey Knox, is he who he is? And he's going to be kind of a 20-catch, 350, 400-yard receiver, which would be solid, by the way. Or is this going to be a breakout season for Trey Knox? And he sort of becomes, and I say this with all due respect, does he become what Gamecock fans hoped Austin Stogner was going to be last year, which is Spencer Rattler's best friend on third downs, one of his best weapons in the passing game, his safety valve, if you will. This Trey Knox, can he flourish into that role? Guys, hype and expectations are a really interesting thing. And one guy that's caught a ton of local buzz, not national buzz, but local buzz in spring ball, Joshua Simon, the Western Kentucky transfer. And you just wonder, can he live up to the hype that's been placed on him? Was a really nice player for the Hilltoppers a season ago, second team All-Conference USA. And so you hear that and you look at the stats and you think, okay, nice piece, nice pickup, whatever. But this really wasn't one that made major headlines, I would say, over the course of the offseason. But as spring ball got underway and a couple practices get under the belt, you continue throughout, you start to hear chatter. You start to hear buzz. Hey, that Joshua Simon guy, he's impressing. That Joshua Simon guy, we think can be a real dude. I've heard people say as far as there are folks in that building that believe by season's end, Joshua Simon's going to be a name that everybody is talking about. And he's an in-state kid that unfortunately was allowed to get away from South Carolina. Now he returns home. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of expectation. And again, guys, this is an all-conference performer at the FBS level previously, so it's not like you're depending on a guy that he has no sort of track record of playing and producing at a high level. But now in the SEC, there's been this local hype, this local buzz created around Joshua Simon, his abilities, what he can do for South Carolina football. At minimum, I say, can he be a nice complementary piece to Trey Knox? In the meantime, live up to the local hype that has been put on him. You look at the rest of the tight end room, guys, the best of the rest, as I call it. Nick Elksnis coming over from Florida, Reed McKeeska, a true freshman, Connor Cox, a true freshman as well. Just what do you get out of that group? Shane Beamer, again, going back to this conversation and going back to this statement he made at SEC Media Days. The Gamecocks are going to rely on true freshmen at every single position on the field to some extent. I do not expect the tight end room to be any different because you need depth. You're going to have guys beyond those top two. Elksnis was a guy that really didn't see the field all that much at Florida. I think a couple of special teams appearances, but didn't do a whole lot. Of course, McKeeska, true freshman, Connor Cox, true freshman. These were guys that were highly thought of in the recruiting process. What are you able to get out of those dudes? Jody Wright, of course, is your tight ends coach. Dowell Loggins has experience coaching tight ends as well. What are you able to get out of the tight end room? It's a fascinating position. And on that note, as we close out with the top storylines, it's a fascinating position because it feels like year in, year out, South Carolina has that guy. They've got a big body dude that's an athletic specimen that, man, this is the year. Let's throw it to the tight end more, right? We hear that joke all the time. Who's going to be the first fan on the Shane Beamer call-in show to ask, hey, coach, are we going to throw it to the tight end more this season? Do you expect us to throw it to the tight end, utilize the tight end? And to be fair, I understand why. You look at South Carolina's track record, their history in producing tight ends. You go back to Hayden Hurst, Wesley Saunders, Jared Cook, Busta Anderson, Justice Cunningham. South Carolina's heyday, they were throwing to the tight end early and often. What does the utilization of the tight end look like in the Dowell Loggins offense? Right? Because Dowell Loggins, this is a guy that has never called a play at the collegiate level. But he was under Kendall Briles. He learned what he learned in the NFL, but under Kendall Briles at Arkansas. He coached up Trey Knox. He coached that room specifically. And so you have to think that the tight end is going to be a very, very big part of what they do this year. And when you have guys like Trey Knox, you have guys like Joshua Simon, I think it'd be a mistake if they are not. But just how is that group utilized? Obviously, I would say last year they were extremely underutilized, and you didn't get the production from that room that you hoped for. With a new array of weapons that you've added this year, a reinvention of the offensive philosophy, I'll say, with the termination of Marcus Satterfield, the hiring of Dowell Loggins, picking up where you left off end of last season, what Shane Beamer and company learned, the lessons they take away from that. I think there's reason to believe that the tight end will finally be featured in South Carolina's offense, and this will be one of the most productive groups on the offensive side of the football for the Gamecocks in the 2023 football season. Guys, that being said, let's jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll keep the conversation rolling in regards to Gamecocks tight ends. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, August the 3rd, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in as the Position Unit Preview Series continues. Excuse me, guys. Of course, as you know, coming up at 1:15, we have our good friend Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate, joining the show in what should be a riveting conversation. And I'll say this, John Edward, if you would like to just take over and duke it out with Mark, maybe I'll just hand over the mic to you and you guys can maybe you can call in. Y'all can just hash it out and I don't know, Barry, whatever hatchet it is that you guys have. Either way, with that being said, which South Carolina tight end has the most to prove this season? And when there's as much turnover in a room as there is in this one, I think the question should probably be which tight end doesn't have a lot to prove this season. So there's an array of different ways we can go with this. But when I look at the room, which guys have real expectations to be big-time contributors, and maybe which guys are you trying to develop and get up to speed and you're just hoping they can be nice depth guys. I don't think there's any secret, guys. Trey Knox and Joshua Simon are the top two options at this position. And while I think Trey Knox certainly has high expectations, has a lot to prove that he can take the next step and have the best season of his collegiate career and really flourish at the tight end position for South Carolina. My pick for the Gamecocks tight end that has the most to prove this season is the transfer from Western Kentucky, Joshua Simon. And it goes back to, guys, the local buzz, the local hype, and the local hoopla, if you will, that's been generated since early in spring practice. You also factor in this. While Trey Knox has a lot to prove, no doubt, I think he actually has less because this is a guy, he's done it at the SEC level, guys. He's produced for another SEC school. So you don't worry about, okay, the step up in competition, things are going to be vastly different, the speed of the game. I mean, this is a dude, hey, when South Carolina traveled to Fayetteville last year and they were playing the Arkansas Razorbacks, we were talking about Trey Knox. He was one of the feature dudes that we mentioned that, hey, South Carolina, better keep an eye on him. Granted, he didn't perform in that game, but this is a dude who's been around the block a time or two at the SEC level. You cannot say that about Joshua Simon. Now, with that being said, he has produced at a high level at the collegiate level, at the FBS level, like we mentioned, second team all-conference for Conference USA a season ago. And you look at the career stats, he really jumped on the scene as a true freshman. 2019, 30 catches, 430 yards, and 4 touchdowns. In 2020, he had 33 catches, 370 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 2021, he dealt with an injury, only played in 1 game, 3 catches for 73 yards, and still 2 touchdowns. So 2 of the 3 catches were touchdown catches. And then finally last year, guys, again, second team all-conference, had 20 catches, 273 yards, 7 touchdowns. So nearly half of his catches a season ago were touchdown catches. So this is a guy who has a knack for the end zone. And you look at the size, guys, 6'4", 235 out of Dalzell, South Carolina, which I got to be honest with you. I could not stop right now and point out Dalzell, South Carolina on a map. I got to say, I never even heard of it. So shame on me for that, I assume. But 86 catches overall, 1,146 yards in his career with 16 touchdown catches. So I think there's a lot of reason when you look at those numbers, you look at the measurables, you look at the statistics, there's a lot of reason to be excited about what he brings to South Carolina's offense, especially opposite of Trey Knox. And I think this is a football team, I think you can expect to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. They're going to utilize the tight end, no doubt. Again, Dowell Loggins coming over from Arkansas, coach tight ends. I think they're going to utilize this position group a ton. And you don't make all conference, by the way, if you can't block, if you can't work in the run game, if you can't be a well-rounded tight end as well. But just how much are you able to get out of him? Again, this is not the Conference USA. This is the SEC. And I know some of you out there maybe get tired of me saying that. Chris, who cares? Why are you making it a big deal? If you can play ball, you can play ball. I hear you. I understand. But guys, you can't rave about how the SEC, there's nothing like it. It's the best conference in college football, and then not acknowledge that it's different. It's just different, man. Speed of the game's different. The defenses he'll face are different. The linebackers, the safeties he'll go up against, they are different. And so I think we feel confident he can make that transition. But, and it's all locally based, right? It's all maybe self-inflicted to a degree, but I just think when you have the type of expectations that have been placed on Joshua Simon, when you have the type of hoopla, I think there's a lot to prove there. And that's a good thing because you want a guy like this to have expectations, to have hype too, because that means you believe he can be a big-time factor in your offense. And based off the statistics, what he's done previously for the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, and again, guys, based off what we've heard behind closed doors, that the staff felt like this is one he should have never got away. This guy should have been a Gamecock from the jump. And, of course, that wasn't this staff's fault. That was Will Muschamp's fault and their recruiting staff, which they just did a bang-up job at keeping the top guys home, right? This guy, Jalen Hyatt's another, whatever. That's a conversation for another day. But they feel like, again, he should have never been allowed to leave. And they feel as if this will be a household name when it's all said and done for Gamecocks football. So Joshua Simon, a guy with a lot of hype, a lot of buzz coming out of spring. I would expect the same in fall camp. An all-conference player at the Conference USA level for Western Kentucky. A guy who has a knack for the end zone. When you look at last year, 7 of his 20 catches were for touchdowns. Can he live up to some of that local buzz and be a huge factor in this South Carolina offense opposite of Trey Knox at the tight end position this season? Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into another quick break. On the other side, we will get our friend Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate on the show. Really exciting stuff, guys, here on this Thursday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, August the 3rd, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in just about 5 minutes or so. We've got Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate jumping online, which should be a fantastic conversation. Really exciting stuff. We're looking forward to it. So, anyways, guys, I had somebody tell me in the chat. Let's see. Somebody mentioned where Dalzell, whatever it's called, is. Let's see. Where did this go? Dalzell, South Carolina, right around the Sumter area. Right outside of Shaw Air Force Base. Okay. Travi, I got to be honest with you, man. I never even heard of it. I never even heard of it, my man. So you learn something new every day. I mean, you got to admit, there's some very random South Carolina towns. Like, unless you're from around the area, Bath, South Carolina, that's another really just random one. If it wasn't for Robbie Davis, Roebuck, South Carolina, right? Like, there's some very random, small South. Is Dalzell known for anything? I guess Joshua Simon. Is it known for anything else, though? Anything significant come out of Dalzell? Or let's see. Jeff Gullidge. Interested to see the grade you put on the tight ends tomorrow. Yeah, it's I've got it in my mind. Like I said, we'll drop it tomorrow. So we'll drop it tomorrow. Again, guys, y'all continue to flood the YouTube chat, the comments, everything else. Again, I want to say thank you yet again to David Nuno of Texags. Really great conversation. Really great stuff. Looking forward to collabing with those guys with more content moving forward. Ray Allen is from Dalzell. Really? John Morant, too? I had maybe I've been living under a rock. I have no idea. I'd never heard of Dalzell, but I don't know. Let's see. Rebecca said she's in Columbia. Rebecca, you and Will enjoy yourself. Y'all have a good time. No doubt. No doubt. Again, guys, we're waiting on Mark Ryan. We're waiting on Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate. Should be a fun and exciting show today. We're going to talk ball for sure. We're going to talk ball. A lot to discuss, a lot of things. Hey, Mark Ryan was right 2 years ago about Florida State and them wanting to get out of the ACC. And, again, after talking with Brandon Marcello this morning about realignment, and, of course, he's in the national scene, the national scope of things, and that's what he covers. I mean, he made it very clear, guys, and, again, you all will hear when that interview drops that Florida State wants out. And if it wasn't for the grant of rights, they'd be gone. They'd be gone yesterday. So, interesting stuff. Yeah, Austin, we're going to just stick around. We're going to open up with the Dylan Stewart commitment and everything that entails. Everything that entails. Don't worry. It's going to happen. I will say this, though. Again, if you're tuned in looking for some knockdown, drag-out fight, shouting match, whatever, I'm not promising that at all. I don't believe in that. There's no need for that. We can speak openly, honestly, respectfully, and be civil, express our opinions, and move on, whatever they might be. So, again, I don't want to, obviously belittle Mark Ryan. I want to understand Mark Ryan. I don't even really want to argue with Mark Ryan. You'll hear more again on my perspective in a second when we get him on here. And, I mean, listen, I mentioned the tweet on social media, and you guys know my thoughts on the specific tweet. But just stick around. Again, you'll understand where I'm coming from, and I'm excited to hear where Mark Ryan is coming from. I'm excited to hear it. Again, guys, 843-790-3377. In case you missed that number, Will Korb, do I ever say anything not with my chest? That is my question. Do I ever say anything not with my chest? Again, leave us your questions, your comments, your calls, everything. Hey, you got comments and questions for Mark Ryan? Leave it in the Leave it in the chat. You know Mark Ryan reads the chat, so leave it in the chat. Leave it in the chat. I'm sure he'll be reading it. I'm sure he will. Q&A Power Hour upcoming next hour. Hey, we got football tonight. Jets and Browns in the Hall of Fame game. For any of you out there who need to scratch that itch, you can't wait to watch football. Hell, we'll be watching. What am I saying? I'll be watching. You'll be watching. We'll all be watching. So, also, of course, guys, it's media day for South Carolina today. They're meeting with the local media, all that, doing their thing, whatever. I'm sure there'll be comments from Shane Beamer at some point today. And then tomorrow it begins. Gamecocks hitting the practice field for the first time this fall, 9:20 a.m. 9:20 a.m. That practice will take place. So I'm sure by the time we jump on TDC tomorrow, there might be some nuggets we have to discuss at minimum in the third hour. John Edward, your blood pressure, my friend, has been at a astronomical rate all week long. I mean, all week long. All week long, John Edward. You have been on one all week long. Lynn Turner said the Savannah Bananas are on ESPN2. Lynn, here's a hot take that may not be a hot take for you. I have no interest in watching the Savannah Bananas. I just – maybe it's because I like baseball. I got no interest in the Savannah Bananas. I really don't. Like, I think it's a mockery to the game of baseball, to be honest. Like, and that's fine. They're not doing it to respect the game, or they're doing it for entertainment value, but I've never been gravitated towards it. I'm not trying to hate on them by any means. Like, I'm sure it'd be a fun thing to go and experience in person and watch it. But like, I just, it does nothing for me. I'll be honest with you. If I'm going to sit down and watch a baseball game, I'll watch a baseball game. But like the Savannah Bananas is one of those things where, like, we all know, like when you watch trash reality TV and you can just feel like your brain melting every second that goes by. That's how I feel if I ever were to watch the Savannah Bananas. Again, guys, we're waiting on the arrival of Mark Ryan. He will join the show. Supposed to be joining us right now. We await his arrival. We shall see. We're getting a call in from Charleston, South Carolina. Again, make sure, leave us a voicemail. Leave us a voicemail, and we will get to your questions, your comments, your calls. Let me actually shut off the voicemail line just in case y'all didn't realize. Okay, so now when you call in or prompt you straight into the voicemail line, you can leave us your voicemails. We'll take those in the third hour of the show. But in the meantime, he joins us every single Thursday. Really excited to get his opinions, insight. Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate on once again. Mark, my friend, what's going on? How are you? Appreciate you taking the time.
Always, man, always. Good to see all you guys, man. We are gearing up. It's a shame there isn't anything going on, Chris.
Absolutely nothing. Hey, quick question. This is just completely random, off the wall, Mark. I was just asked, or somebody just left a comment. Do you enjoy like the Savannah Bananas? Are you familiar with them? Do you enjoy it? I'm not a big, like, if I'm going to watch baseball, I want to watch baseball. That to me is like probably great for the entertainment value of things, but I'm not a big Savannah Bananas guy. I'll be honest with you. It's not that moved the needle for me.
It might be a niche thing, Chris. It might be a one-time deal, right? But I haven't ever been to a game, but I find what they're doing to be fascinating. And Chris, it works, right? So there's a lot of things that, like, wrestling isn't for me, but I can't dispute the fact that it has an audience. You see what I'm saying? And so what I think is really interesting about that, Chris, is it's kind of an admission, right, on some level, that for the casual fan, a regular baseball game is not enough, right? I mean, would you not agree?
Yeah, for sure.
You are in the rare group, Chris, of hardcore baseball fans that can enjoy a 4 to 5 hour game. I've long since left that group. So I think their success is kind of an admission that baseball needs to juice it up a little bit.
And I would agree. And we could have a whole separate conversation about why, and I've heard you talk on your show a lot, by the way, about why baseball is diminishing, trying to keep up with, I think, the pace of life and the pace of real world and everything happening so instantaneously, and baseball being a game where you have to be patient. Mark, let's dive into it. The Dylan Stewart stuff, he commits, he's a Gamecock. And I'm going to start with this, and hear me out. Let me explain this. I hate nothing more when I've built my platform up to what it is, the entity, what have you, and you get to a certain point and something happens and you give your honest take, your honest, unfiltered opinion. And people, and that's all you can do, right? Is be genuine, be honest, be true to yourself. And people come to you and say, why did you say that? You should have said this. This is what you should have said. And so it'd be hypocritical for me because I feel like that completely undermines, like, I've gotten here being true to myself, honest with myself, genuine myself, trusting my gut. Sometimes that plays well. Sometimes it doesn't. You live without the result. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that when Dylan Stewart committed, you should have thrown a parade for Shane Beamer. You should have thrown a parade for the Gamecocks. And I'm not even here to argue on the tweet that, Dylan Stewart commits, the first place we go comparing Beamer and Muschamp. I'm not here to argue it. I just want to understand you and give you the floor, because I know you said a tweet's not a reaction, but it is. It's a react. There's no tweet without a reaction to a certain event. And I know that those were facts presented, not denying the facts. And I don't even care that you brought them up. But the look of it, that was the first place you went. Again, I'm not judging you for it. It's your platform, your entity. You built it the way you have. You do this thing full time because you're good at it. Give me your insight. Why go there? Why go there first off? Why go there from the jump?
Well, Chris, you did judge. Like you tweeted right away, they get Dylan Stewart, and this is your reaction. So, Chris, I'll bring you into my mentality when I got the news. Okay. 5-star Dylan Stewart commits to South Carolina. Massive for the Gamecocks. Absolutely massive. What a top 15 player, almost unanimously across the board on every recruiting service. What Beamer is doing in the nation's capital is incredible. Right? I go to Twitter, Chris, all of that is already being said. You're right. Oh, this is incredible what Beamer's doing in DC, et cetera. All that's already being said. By the way, shame on Penn State, Maryland, and Virginia Tech for allowing Beamer to do that. I mean, think about that for a minute. It's not like DC is close to Columbia. You know what I mean? Nick Harbor, Dylan Stewart, others coming down the pike. You got to tip your cap to what he's done, man. That's a great get. But then I'll tell you where my brain went, Chris, because I'm always looking to give our audience something they can't get anywhere else. I said, does this commitment elevate them above and beyond what's been done in the past? Not just Muschamp, but Spurrier as well. Okay, so then I did a statistical analysis, Chris, and the statistical analysis showed what it showed. Had the statistical analysis showed that Beamer was 3 places higher in the SEC than Muschamp was, I would have tweeted that. I think you and I both know that it wouldn't have gotten 1/10 of the reaction, right? Because the reason why local news leads with bad news is that that's what people react to. But you have my pledge, man, that if once I had done the research, I didn't have the research done when the news came out. I did the research after the news came out. And I guess the difference between you and I, Chris, is we both may have had the curiosity of saying, I wonder, is this breaking new ground? Is this taking South Carolina to a place they haven't been? We both may have wondered the same thing. We both may have been inclined to do the same research. The difference between you and I is you would have held on to it if it revealed what it did. And I don't care if people are going to react negatively to the facts, Chris, because in the end, Chris, facts are not a take. They're facts. It's not a reaction. It's facts. And it's not so much Beamer versus Muschamp as it is Beamer versus what's already been done in the program. And I decided to do the research, Chris, because I didn't know the answer. And I thought it would be good to know the answer. So let's bring your audience into that research, right? Because my research states, Chris, that outside of rare outliers, you got to have a 4-year cycle of averaging being a top 3 class in the SEC. Okay. So over a 4-year period among SEC teams, you got to be top 3 in the SEC to win the SEC. So I wanted to see, where is South Carolina? Where is South Carolina? Because ultimately that's the goal, right? If the goal isn't to win the SEC at some point, What are we doing here, right? I'm a Florida grad. If we're not going to win the SEC, what are we doing here? So anyway, Muschamp's classes in the SEC were 10th, 8th, 7th, 8th, and 8th. Okay? Beamer's classes have been 14th, 10th, 7th, and 7th thus far, including 2024. If you want to say you can't count, if you want to say include all the years, then Beamer's rank among SEC schools is 9.5 out of 14 teams. Muschamp's is 8.2 out of 14 teams. If you want to say, well, the first year isn't fair because it's a new coach, everyone taking over, Muschamp's rank out of 14 teams is 7.75. Okay, that's this average SEC rank. Beamer's is 8 out of 14. So it wasn't to make any overarching points, Chris. It really wasn't. You know, the question that we have asked on our show is, when all is said and done, is Beamer going to be closer to Spurrier or closer to Muschamp? And I think it's such an interesting question because if I am ranking what I've seen today, Spurrier at South Carolina was a 10 because he's the guy that set the bar at South Carolina. Muschamp was a 4. Got great talent, didn't do squat with him. I would say thus far, Beamer's been about a 7, which perfectly splits the difference between Spurrier and Muschamp, which makes that question, who is he going to be closer to, all the more fascinating. Chris, you know me, man. I don't care how things look, okay? I don't care about PR. I did a statistical analysis. I found it interesting. I share it with you guys. That's that.
And all those points are fair, Mark. All those points are fair. And like I said, I mean, it is very much so your right to do so. I guess all South Carolina can do at this point is pray to God that Shane Beamer wins 9 games and eclipses that 3-year mark, because I think the last conversation, I mean, and you get this, so you know why this plays, dare I say, so well, because, I mean, that tweet got like 60,000 views. Will Muschamp's a dirty word in Columbia. It just is. But it's disgusting. I feel icky talking about it. And
but
so
Chris,
when you compare,
Chris, yeah,
right.
let's elaborate on that point a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
That also, Chris, is so damn interesting because, you know, when you look at the 2 most important statistics, right? Wins and losses and recruiting ranking. Would we not agree those are the 2 most important statistics? At this point, Beamer and Muschamp are virtually identical in those 2 statistics. Yet, you know, when you post that, Gamecock fans will say, well, but blue chip ratio. Well, but number of 5 stars. And Chris, that would be like saying in a track and field race, well, we led for more laps than the other guy, but who won the race? Oh, he did. We don't care who won we don't care about the intricacies. We care about the big picture. Now, why did I give Beamer a 7 and Muschamp a 4? Because, Chris, you'd have to be blind if you couldn't see the positive momentum within the program, some of the culture changes within the program, the back-to-back good performances, great performances against Tennessee and Clemson. How many times did you see Muschamp's teams, deliver an A-level performance and then not show up the following week? Like the team itself had multiple personality disorder, Chris, right? So Beamer is elevating the program, I believe, above and beyond that. But yet the 2 most important metrics, wins and losses and recruiting, don't reveal that yet.
And one of the greatest lies, Mark, ever told in college football is that you are what your record says you are. We've heard Josh Pate say that, obviously. But when you think about, to your point, you just said it, the context, it's just night and day. It is. I know the record. The context through 2 seasons at least is totally different, because what Will Muschamp did, now that we look back, and maybe this wasn't a popular take at the moment, but we look back, year 2 was smoke and mirrors. It was. I mean, you almost lost Louisiana Tech, for Christ's sake. So, I hear what you're saying. Again, all the points are valid. All the points are fair. Again, there's a reason you do what you do, because you're able to articulate those points. I think it was and as you know, and I know we've talked about this before. I've heard you and Diesel talk about it. I heard y'all talk about it on the airwaves, and that was me, by the way, commenting on YouTube, because cool. I wanted to check out. I wanted to check out the YouTube. I want to check out the YouTube stream. Yeah. What I guess my deal was this. you know how Twitter works. And so when there's just such a small snapshot, and I personally would have loved to hear your reaction to the Dylan Stewart news versus going straight to the Beamer Muschamp thing. Like, I get that's the low hanging fruit. I know that's the retweets, views generator, the engagement generator, what have you. But I want to hear about Mark Ryan, what he thinks about the actual pickup, because you and I have been talking about recruiting for weeks about South Carolina's, they're in a lull, they're in a slump, and then they finally break the slump. And we go to the Beamer Muschamp thing, which is just like the most agonizing. And I get it. I know you don't care. I don't care. We run towards that type of banter. But it is the most agonizing subject matter to discuss. It is.
So Chris,
nobody wants to talk about it.
It's not as much Beamer Muschamp. And believe me, Chris, I'll be ready when Beamer inevitably passes Muschamp for all the Gamecocks to say, oh, guess who's better than Muschamp now? And Chris, if you're fair, which I think you are, you'll say, no, Mark was never saying that. Mark was asking a question, is Beamer closer to Spurrier or closer to Muschamp? That's the question. Chris, that's a fair point. And I can do that in the future, right? I can do that in the future. I didn't feel like I had anything, Chris, that wasn't already being said, filling my timeline. Man, what Beamer's doing in DC is amazing. Man, this is the second 5-star. I am incapable, Chris, of looking at the micro. I have to widen the lens. I have to look at the big picture, right? I once was hosting a show in Houston, Chris, and the longtime football analyst said to me, Mark, your show is very, very macro, right? Like, I'm a macroeconomics guy, not a microeconomics guy. I've got to widen the lens. So obviously, Chris, it's a great signing. It's an unbelievable commitment. Even more impressive is the fact that he says he's shutting down his recruitment. And, again, like G.G. Jackson was to Lamont Paris, this makes South Carolina electable, if you will, or selectable to other 5-star players, which is incredible. But Chris, if you strive to give people something they can't get anywhere else, like I strive to give people something they can't get anywhere else, I immediately thought of, okay, does this elevate South Carolina above where they've been in the past? And if the research had shown, Chris, that it had, I 100% would have posted that. You know what I'm saying? I post the research no matter what the research shows. Chris, a lot of times you'll start to go down a stats research rabbit hole, and you'll be hoping the research shows a certain thing, and it shows something else. And then it's up to you. Do you want to be a valid researcher, or do you want to be bogus? If you're a valid researcher, man, you show the research no matter what it says. It just got me that people thought I was making some sort of take when all I was doing was posting very, very valid numbers. But to your point, Chris, that is fair. Okay. Look, you made a fair point. Like, I went right to the numbers. I didn't really give, a take about how great the signing was. And the reason is simply, Chris, that Twitter's limits you if you don't want to pay, and I don't want to pay. They limit you to 280 characters. And I always feel in my head that I can expound upon everything else on my show, right? On the show, I have no limitations. Chris, do you know in an average show I say 100,000 words? I probably said 100,000 words in this last rant I've just given you. But I say 100,000 words. I have no limitations when we're on the air, right? I have limitations on Twitter. So if I've got 10 minutes to fire out a tweet, you're going to get the first thing that comes to my mind. But that's a fair point moving forward. I'll pay more attention to that moving forward, for sure.
And Mark, all of your points, I want to say also, are fair, are valid. And for those tuning in, that's how you have civil discourse and keep it moving. So with that being said, Mark, we've talked enough about Twitter. The actual commitment itself. And to your point, hey, the numbers, there's no bias. It's not a take. They are just what they are. They're the numbers. Would you agree with me, though, in saying that after landing Nicholas Harbor in the 2023 class, now landing Dylan Stewart in the 2024 class, maybe the numbers between Muschamp and Beamer, maybe right now they're identical, but I would argue it feels like South Carolina is trending to surpass that. When you factor in this, 12 top 200 prospects committed in the last two cycles. It's never been done before. And again, you look at the guys they're bringing in. Would you agree that it's trending to surpass what they've done in the past?
Oh, yes. But at the same point, Chris, at the same point, you know, at some point, you are what your record says you are, right? Like, at what point is that, Chris? Because, you and I have discussed on this show the numbers that say the coaches that are going to pop in the modern era typically pop in year 3, right? That's why I feel like Shane Beamer's not on the hot seat now, but he is under pressure because, Chris, we've traditionally seen that the coaches pop in year 3. And, Chris, I can tell you that the honeymoon period is over after year 3. So why is Shane Beamer under pressure? Because if he drops a 6-6 or maybe even a 7-5 this year, Chris, it's the honeymoon period is over at that point. And then it's like, oh man, this really isn't above what Muschamp is doing. They're pressure on him now, I think, to elevate above and beyond that. Chris, I'll ask you this. At what point does the record dictate what you actually are? Is it year 3? Is it after that?
I think it's a very good point. And I'll tell you this, Mark, because listen, I gave you the grief about the comparison. I said this when when South Carolina was looking for an offensive coordinator. That's why there was so much pressure to find the right guy. Because to be fair, Will Muschamp didn't come out of the womb and he was identified as a bad offensive coach, right? I mean, at one point when he was at Texas, he was identified as the hottest assistant coach in all of college football, the coach in waiting at the University of Texas, which is no small honor. So he gets the job at Florida. It was a blank slate. Nobody knew what to expect. You knew he was a defensive guy for sure, but you didn't know the offenses would be bad. He built that reputation with bad OC hire after bad OC hire, after botched quarterback, after mishaps offensively. So for Shane Beamer, to your point, if South Carolina does go 6-6 this year and the offense stinks, well, all of a sudden, we are having a different conversation in the sense of it's 3-4 years from now. I think even if South Carolina is winning 7-8 games, even if they're cracking 9, if the offense continues to be a problem, to me, that's Shane Beamer's number one objective over the next couple of years. Fix the offense. Because if you're going to be going 7-5 or 8-4, be scoring 40 a game, Mark. Why did Tennessee get so much more hype going into last season than South Carolina did when Tennessee was a 7-win team, basically just like South Carolina in 2021? It's because they had an offense scoring 45 points per game, and they had an explosive quarterback, and it was a fun brand of football. You see what I'm saying? So I get what you're saying. I wanted to lead with this, though. You talked about 7-5. We've given our predictions. We've given 7-5. Here's my thing, because I agree with you, year 3 pivotal. I don't think it's going to be a 7-5, though. I think the offense is going to get better, number one, because I'm not sure it can be much worse than last year. Dowell Loggins can't be much worse. Now, what does it mean for the long term? We'll see. You talk about popping. Getting to 8-4 would be popping, matching last year's win total. 9-3, I mean, no doubt. Anything beyond that's a miracle. If they go 7-5, do you feel like there's some gray area in that conversation based off of the context of how the 7-5 happens?
Oh, absolutely, Chris. Absolutely. And especially when you consider how long it took Spurrier to pop at South Carolina. Now, you and I both know this is a different era than when Spurrier was coaching. We are far more impatient, right? We've seen a consistent trend of coaches popping in year 3, even though Steve Spurrier did not, right? When Spurrier did pop in Columbia, it was explosive. So, Chris, I think you and I have said 6-6 would be a failure. 7-5 would be a disappointment. 8-4 would be a success. 9-3 and above would be superhero status, right? And I think you and I have been in perfect agreement with that. If 7-5 is a disappointment, Chris, is it still plausible, possible that Beamer is going to deliver well above and beyond what Muschamp did? Yeah, because I'll tell you what, Chris, I don't see Beamer falling into a pit of despair in year 4 and 5 the way Will Muschamp did. I don't see that happening. At some point, the record, though, has to dictate that he's trending more towards Spurrier than the guy with the 8-letter bad word last name that Gamecocks don't want to remember, right? At some point, the numbers have to dictate that. So Chris, I suppose I would say I'm somewhere in the middle of you and Josh Pate when you say the record, the record shows who you are, right? Like at some point, the record has to reflect that. Otherwise, what are we doing, right? At some point, the recruiting is going to have to be better than Muschamp. At some point, the one-loss record is going to have to be better than Muschamp, and that traditionally happens in year 3. We'll see if it happens this year for Shane Beamer. That said, man, hell of a get. And a guy like Dylan Stewart can be a windfall of other prospects still to come, right? And man, if Shane Beamer can get that class around the top 10, I mean, imagine the excitement in Columbia if that class finished around the top 10, Chris, okay? Because in the end, right, it shows as a barometer of how far away you are. You got to be roughly top 3 in the SEC, Chris, to win the SEC. And you got to do that over a 4-year period. And, the next step for Beamer will be to deliver a top 5 in the SEC class. Not necessarily top 5 overall, right? Not top 5 in the nation, but top 5 in the SEC. Because the best that he or Muschamp did was 7th in the SEC, about midway through the SEC. So can Beamer do that this year in 2024? Can this year be the year that the Gamecocks and all other incredibly loyal and passionate fans get a top 5 SEC class? It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and you look at the prospects that are out there, Mark, if they're able to land those guys, I think we all feel like Jonathan Paylor's probably going to NC State at this point, but you look at a guy like a Daniel Hill, Jalewis Solomon, et cetera, on down the list. I think the pieces are there, certainly, to at minimum finish top 15, at minimum, and make some noise moving up that SEC ladder. Let's move off recruiting, Mark, and talk more national college football landscape. Realignment at this time of year, it just takes college football by storm. I'll first get your thoughts, and I know you guys have a lot of different national personalities and personalities in general, which is really cool. So you've got a really good feel on just the scope of everything happening in college football. For those of us who grew up watching Pac-12 After Dark, Southern Cal, Washington, Arizona State, whatever the game might be, those days might be coming to an end. My friend, what are your thoughts on the Pac-12? Because it feels like that conference is on life support right now.
Chris, they made the single biggest mistake in the entire college football realignment discussion. And I'll tell you, man, it's one that I don't fully fault them for at the time. But looking back, Chris, we all are nostalgic. I think we're all going to long for the days of college football past, right? Josh Pate asked the question today, if you had to choose one for eternity, would you rather have college football 2007 and before or college football 2027 and after? And 76% are saying 2007 and before. Chris, here is the cataclysmic error the Pac-12 made. They turned down Oklahoma and Texas. They turned Oklahoma and Texas down back in 2012. Why did they do it? Because they were on sound footing at the time, right? They wanted to keep things the way that they were. They wanted to keep their geographical footprint. I respect and appreciate all of that. But guess where the Pac-12 would not be if they had selected Oklahoma and Texas at the time? They wouldn't be on the verge of extinction, right? Chris, I think college football is, over the next 10 years, going to be in grave danger of falling out of the number 2 spot in the parlance of American sports. NFL is number 1. There's no contender. But not many people realize that college football has established itself as a very clear number 2. But what are we seeing? We're seeing baseball making gains again, making changes to the game that are bringing back the casual fans like myself, right? And college football is hanging itself, Chris. It's hanging itself. And, the presidents are freely and openly admitting that this is all about money. They'll tell you it's all about money. They're not dumb. We're not dumb. It's all about money, Chris. But they are taking us for granted. They're assuming we're still going to show up, rain or shine, Chris. And I am not so sure, Chris, that is going to be the case. I think when you tune in, Chris, to see some football games, and it looks like a bowl game attendance, like Gasparilla bowl game attendance, because A, the TV product is so good, and B, the road team isn't going to travel across the country, and C, no one in Piscataway, New Jersey, where Rutgers plays, cares about Rutgers versus UCLA. See what I'm saying? Like, I really think they're taking us for granted. They're assuming we're always going to be there. I think that's a grave mistake. I think the regionality of college football made it unique and special. And they're not going to stop there, Chris. They're going to ensure that the regular season is ruined as well by expanding this playoff above and beyond 12 teams, right? Why do we have to watch, Chris? Your phone goes nuts like my phone goes nuts. Oh my God, man. Do you see? It's the third quarter. Akron leads Ohio State 17-14. Well, Chris, with 12 teams making the playoffs in the future, 16 teams, 20 teams making the playoffs, we don't care if Ohio State loses to Akron anymore. We don't have the joy of watching a team's season be ruined anymore because they're still going to make the playoff no matter what. The playoff week in and week out was what made old school college football so unique and special. And in the name of the almighty buck, they're assuming we're still going to be there, Chris. And I think if they keep going down this road, the numbers could seriously dwindle. I will add, Chris, that exactly 2 years ago, I tweeted out that Clemson and Florida State had reached out to the SEC. The SEC was not going to add them at that time. The very next day, the president of Florida State came out with a statement on Florida State University letterhead, basically calling me a liar. 2 years to the day, the president of Florida State comes out and says, we're going to leave the ACC unless things change drastically. Chris, it was the same damn thing 2 years ago, but I had some intel that made people uncomfortable that the schools weren't willing to admit publicly yet, right? And that's the only thing that happened.
And I wanted to go there next, Mark. You lead me to my next point before we get you out of here. Again, congratulations on and again, you just report what you hear and go off what you know and go with your sources. And turns out it was right. And I mean, now that doesn't seem inconceivable at all because realignment is just such a thing. Like, it's like, yeah, I mean, if you tell me tomorrow that some team's going to some conference, it's like, okay, whatever. I mean, yeah, the sun came up also. Like, what's new? Maybe 2 years ago, that was a, kind of a unspoken, unheard of thing, but you were ahead of it. So congratulations. Thoughts, though, on the Florida State. And I actually talked with Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports this morning, and he's got obviously a feel of the national pulse. And he made it very clear, listen, Chris, if the grant of rights didn't exist, Florida State's out. They're gone. I mean, that's the only thing keeping them intact. Your thoughts on the future of the ACC with FSU, Clemson, maybe some others jumping ship, and maybe it's the Big Ten that's the landing spot?
Yeah, Chris, look, we did a segment on our show yesterday, what we would do if we were manning the different conferences in the Power Five. The Pac-12, look, man, is screwed, right?
Yeah.
They're absolutely screwed. They've got to do whatever they can to hold on to Oregon and Washington. I don't know if that's going to be enough. You lose UCLA, you lose USC, you lose Colorado. I hear Arizona might also be Big 12 bound, right? That takes you down to 8. Why not, Chris, go get Boise State and San Diego State? We're more familiar with the Pac-10 name anyway, right? Pac-12 was always a little clunky, always a little weird. You add Boise State, you add San Diego State, you get the kind of the snooty academic schools like Stanford not to turn their nose up on the Boise States of the world, and then you still have a pretty decent football conference, right? If you're able to do that. I think the ACC or the Pac-12, though, Chris, is going to be extinct as we know them, as power brokers in college football, one or the other, if not both. And I think, and I'm going to get into this point on my show today, Chris, the fact that the Big Ten seems to be not settling for seconds, it'd be really easy for them to say, okay, we're one of the top 2. This is good enough for us. The fact that they're not willing to settle for seconds could actually be a really, really good thing for Clemson. Clemson, I think, the Big Ten by further expanding is going to make the SEC uncomfortable. The SEC knows, Chris, that as long as the Big Ten has the same number of teams as it, that the SEC is a far superior product, right? But if the Big Ten goes to 18 and 20 and the SEC gets uncomfortable, that's when the SEC bids come for Clemson, Florida State, possibly Miami. And the Big Ten seems to be going down that road of let's make the SEC uncomfortable. which is really interesting, Chris, which is really interesting. I want to let you know this, man. 16-team Big Ten, including UCLA and USC, 16-team SEC, including Oklahoma and Texas. I gave every program in those 16-team leagues, Chris, a 1 through 10 score based on where they are as a program right now, right? And the 16-team SEC came out to 110. The Big Ten came out to 98.5, right? When I gave average 1 through 10 scores. So the SEC is still significantly above. The Big Ten is being aggressive. I think that aggressiveness could lead to Clemson and Florida State joining the SEC, as somebody floated a couple of years ago.
And it definitely sounds like, Mark, we are headed to 3 mega conferences with the SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12. So, it's inevitable. Change happens, but college football certainly looks much different than any of us have ever known it. That's for sure. Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate joins the show every Thursday. Mark, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Great stuff as always.
Hey, guys, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you. Invite you guys to check us out at the Fan Upstate, 3 to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. You can listen on the Odyssey app, AUDACY. Just look up the Fan Upstate. You'll see us right there offsides. You can also find us on YouTube. The first 2 hours and 20 minutes of the show every single day are on YouTube. Sorry you have to deal with my ugly face, my ugly mug. But YouTube, all you got to do is search the Fan Upstate. You'll see us right there at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, Mark. Take care, man. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Great stuff, guys, from Mark Ryan. And as I mentioned, wasn't going to be the knockdown, drag-out fight many were expecting. Just wanted to get the perspective. So there you go. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, though, I want to hear from you, taking your questions, your comments, your calls, and more in our Q&A Power Hour. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, Hollow Dougie,
All right, guys, we're back here on the Daily Crow, Thursday, August the 3rd, 2023, and we begin our Q&A Power Hour. Let me first say thank you to Mark Ryan for taking the time to chat. Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate. You can check out Offsides with Mark Ryan every single day, 3 to 7. And, you know, guys, I think that conversation is a great example of why you'll hear people say when something happens and it causes an emotional reaction, positive or negative, the 24-hour rule is a great rule to implement and a great rule to apply. Because you'll find yourself, whatever the subject matter is, whatever the disagreement, what have you, you'll find yourself 24 hours later much more clear-minded, not leading with emotion, and seeing things for what they are. And again, not letting your judgment be clouded because your emotions are in play. So when Mark Ryan first tweeted that, you know, I had a response. I had a reaction, guys, admittedly. But 2 days later, you sit down and you're like, okay, let's just discuss it civilly. There's no need for any even raising of the voice or you know, doing anything outlandish, saying anything outlandish, what have you. So great conversation. Great stuff with Mark Ryan. And again, appreciate him taking the time. Like I said, guys, now I want to hear from you. 843-790-3377 as our Q&A Power Hour gets underway. We do have a voicemail to play to start off this Q&A Power Hour. Let's get into it.
This is Liam Williamson here. I put $450 on the Georgia game. Do you think we will beat Georgia? Yes or no? Go ahead and call me back, please. Thank you.
I think he said his first name was Liam. Either way, caller calls in, says he has put $450 on the Georgia game and says, do you think that we will beat Georgia? I don't know if that was Cody Gaskin's son who just called in, because Cody has gone on record and said, I'll be there to rush the field when the Gamecocks beat Georgia. If you're putting $450 on the Gamecocks to beat Georgia, God bless you. You could have donated that $450 to TSUS, honestly. You could have given that $450 to NIL. You could have done something productive with that $450 instead of flushing it down the drain. I mean, just saying. Guys, I also wanted to point to this or make this point really quickly. And I don't know if they're tuning in the show. I doubt they are. I have no idea, though. But when I was on Inside the Gamecocks this morning, I saw someone comment during our appearance, and I was not able to get to the question. Again, if they're in here, I hope they leave the comment again or speak up or what have you. But someone said and asked me, Chris, you've locked in 7-5 as your prediction for the 2023 season. And I was asked, Chris, do you intentionally pick? He said that feels a game or two or three off for South Carolina this year. Do you intentionally pick a game or two more conservative so that, you know, you're happily surprised? Or, you know, basically asking, do I go ultra conservative in my predictions? And the answer is absolutely not. No, I pick based off of what I really think is going to happen. 76 Gamecocks was the one who left the question. And, I wish he was in here, he or she was in here, so that he could leave the question, he or she could leave the question again, and I could fully answer it. But based off what I briefly saw, no, I do not give conservative predictions in that manner. And that actually led me, guys, believe it or not, that led me to looking back at all of the season predictions I've given for South Carolina since I started doing this. And what I found might surprise you. So here we go. 2017, January of 2017, I started creating content around the Gamecocks in any capacity. I do not believe that I made predictions for the 2017 season. So we're going to throw that one out. 2018 was the first season that I recall, that it's documented, that I made predictions for that season. In 2018, I picked the Gamecocks to go, and it's documented, either 8-4 or I want to say 9-3. I want to say 9-3, but it was 8-4 or 9-3. And Ruination, by the way, I didn't take the comment as disrespectful. I just wanted to address it because I think it's a good question. But I'm shedding light just on that. Back in 2018, I picked, even if it was 8-4, I picked South Carolina to win 8 games. In 2018, we all recall what happened. South Carolina finished 7-6 with a loss to Virginia in the Belk Bowl. In 2019, you might recall, we did our season preview show predictions, what have you, with Brad Crawford that summer. I predicted South Carolina to go 7-5. Of course, as we all know, the Gamecocks in 2019 went 4-8. In 2020, I very realistically picked South Carolina to go 3-7. The Gamecocks finished 2-8 that season. In 2021, year one of Shane Beamer, I picked the Gamecocks to go 6-6, 3-5. South Carolina went 6-6, 3-5. And finally, last year, I picked South Carolina to go 8-4, 4-4 in the preseason, with a win over Clemson. South Carolina, you know where I'm going with this, went 8-4, 4-4 in SEC play, with a win over Clemson. The point I'm making a 76 Gamecock and all the rest of you is this. Do you realize that I have never, in the history of TSUS, I have never given season predictions and missed on the conservative side. I've only missed on the optimistic side. Even 2020, when I came out with a 3-7 prediction and I was labeled as negative and toxic, I was obviously being over-optimistic. 2019, 7-5. I was obviously being over-optimistic. 2018, the same exact thing. So, quite on the contrary, people label me at times as, they see a 7-5 record. They see a loss to Clemson. Oh, you're being negative. Slapdick take. Guys, I've never missed on the conservative side. I've only been overly optimistic. I don't pray to be correct yet again. I don't pray to miss on that side yet again. I hope for the first time ever, South Carolina actually exceeds my prediction. But to this point, they haven't. It's never happened. And so when I make predictions, I could argue to you, I'm picking on the optimistic side. The numbers would say I'm correct. Either way, guys, let's dive into your questions more. So I just thought that was really interesting because some will say, oh, he's picking 7-5, slapdick see Philly. He thinks we're losing to Tennessee. What a slapdick. He thinks we're losing to Clemson. Like, odds say in years past, it's more likely we go 6-6 than 8-4 if my pick's 7-5. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And no, I don't try to be 1 or 2 games conservative. I am trying to be correct. I'd like to be correct because sure as shit, y'all let me know when I'm wrong. Don't get a lot of acknowledgement when we're right, but damn it, we hear it from everybody when we're wrong. Anyways, That being said, let's jump into the questions. We have a ton of them here on this Thursday at 2:06 p.m. in our third hour. Bruin Nation, find some joy. Bruin Nation, just tell me to screw off next time. I'd much prefer that. I'm a grown man, not a child. Let's see. Tons of questions. Will Cord, what do you think about Petrie playing baseball through the summer? I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, all the top guys do that, Will. All the top college guys, they play in like a Cape Cod league or some sort of summer wood bat league because baseball has turned into a 24/7, 365 sport just like everything else. So, no, I love it, though. It's good. It's great to keep the game sharp. And, you know, he's not a pitcher. He doesn't necessarily need to give his arm 3 months of rest, 2 months of rest like some guys. So, either way. Let's see. Getting into your more recent questions. John Edwards says, Shane Beamer press conference at 3 o'clock. Where are we seeing that? I'm not doubting you. Oh, look at me knocking over the phone line there in excitement. Let me check real quick. We'll check the Gamecock YouTube page. Is it one of those things where it's scheduled as a YouTube? There it is. Yes, sir. Shane Beamer press conference, 3 o'clock, scheduled on YouTube. So, no, the answer is no. We will not be staying live after to cover the press conference. We will end this thing right at 3 o'clock. Then I will tune into that, cover the presser, of course, and the podcast. Everything will drop as normal. That's something we got to kind of figure out this year. With the live show. I know that we have aired Shane Beamer's press conferences on Tuesdays before. I don't know that we're going to do that. I really don't. Just because we're going to have so much subject matter to discuss, I just don't know that we really have time, guys, to put it on these airwaves. So, I don't know. Either way, guys, good on John Edwards pointing it out, by the way. Shane Beamer speaking at 3 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Be sure to check it out. Luke Kennedy says, I'm right there with you, Chris. Can't be a game or two off. I'm in the 6-6 crowd. I love the Gamecocks more than anything. No reason to believe we can beat Missouri and Kentucky. Just being real. Well, Luke, I would say this to just play devil's advocate and kind of push back on your Kentucky take. I mean, listen, that game at home in November, I think you got to like South Carolina's chances there. I think you got to like South Carolina's chances there for sure. Mizzou and Como, going to be tough. Man. And I mean, that's what's funny. Like, people look at my 7-5 prediction and some might scoff at it, whatever. Some people have labeled that lazy 7-5 take. I will just I'll say this. Yes, I have Carolina losing to Mississippi State. But I've also got the Gamecocks stealing too late against Mizzou and Kentucky. So I think if you win both of those, that's pretty solid, right? And we're talking about a place in Como. What? You haven't won there since 2000. When was it? 16? No, excuse me, 18, when Debo took the kickoff back. You haven't won there since 2018. Or was that 17? I think it was 17. It was 17, yes, because 19 was the Ryan Helinski backwards fumble pass thing. It was 2017. So 2017 is the last time you've won in Columbia, Missouri. It'd be impressive to get a win there. No doubt. Let's see. Brennan M says, Chris Phillips must have pulled his hair out when Mark talked about the bad things about the expanded playoff. Newsflash, it'll diminish the regular season. Yes, Brennan M., I think to the casuals it will. I don't think and that's the biggest thing too. And I guess that's what you have to factor in. So to your point, if we're trying to generate more buzz and more interest in college football, does an expanded playoff and the regular season games, quote unquote, meaning less, does it diminish value if you're a diehard, you're showing up. No matter what, we all love college football. You're showing up. But does it diminish value if those upsets don't mean as much anymore? Sure. But the NFL makes it work. That's the greatest product sports puts out there on a year-in, year-out basis. They have a playoff. Guys, you can lose 6, 7 regular season games in the NFL and make the playoffs. Why doesn't the NFL's numbers suffer? I know this isn't the NFL, but why don't their numbers suffer? I mean, if a playoff is so bad, how does it work at that level? Just asking. Let's jump to the phone lines here. Justin, what's up, man? How are you?
How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. I appreciate you asking. What's going on?
Hey, Chris. I've been listening to ACC Pac-10. Man, the ACC is in bad shape, Chris.
The ACC is in bad shape, Justin. The Pac-12 worse, though. I think the Pac-12 is literally on life support. But yeah, man, the ACC, even if you lose Florida State, you lose Clemson, who knows, man? Who knows what it looks like? So,
Chris, Hey, Chris, the thing about this, Clemson is how bold me yesterday. They said, well, if we go to the SEC or Big Ten, well, how much money might go get? You know, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bag chase at this point, man. I mean, everything is, and I know that wears on people, and I totally get it. I really do. But it is what it is. It's just the nature of the beast, and here we are, and realignment's a real thing, and it's funny. The more it happens, the more I find myself saying rivalries over realignment. But it's inevitable, man. It's inevitable.
Yeah, and Chris, the thing about soccer, there's a board trustee me about, and Sonny CC School said who will go bring the SEC in near future. That's what they look at now, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how college football shakes out. The future of it. It's so many moving pieces.
Yeah, and Chris, you wish this never happened to anybody, right, Chris?
Yeah. No, yeah, man. I wonder how the SEC, what they do in this, if they decide to expand, or I don't think they will. I think they feel good about what they've got coming in with Texas and Oklahoma. But, Greg Sankey is a forward-thinking commissioner, and he will take action if necessary. If the right team shows up, I don't think they will hesitate to act.
Oh, yeah. And Chris, the thing about this, if you're Greg Sankey, who should y'all look at the most, right, Chris?
Who's what now?
If I'm Greg Sankey, what team I should look at the most, Chris? Who's doing good?
I mean, listen, if I was Greg Sankey and you talk about expanding the brand, the blueprint, I think North Carolina would be a good ad, because anytime you can add the state school and you can kind of capture the entire state, I think that helps. So I think North Carolina is a team that makes sense. I think Florida State makes sense. That's a huge national brand. I really do believe they make a lot of sense. Gamecock fans hate it here. I think Clemson makes sense. I mean, Clemson's an SEC team in the ACC anyways. I mean, that's how it's almost like identify the things that don't fit in the ACC. Clemson and Florida State are they're on a different level, from the stadium to the facilities to the results. Clemson is literally an SEC team in the ACC. So I'm not saying I necessarily want them to come over, but if I'm Greg Sankey and I'm looking to make a splash, those were a couple that I think stand out that could that could make a difference. That could provide a lot of value to the SEC.
Oh yeah, I agree too, Chris. And the thing about this, if you're Greg Sankey, go see South Carolina, North Carolina game on September to see how they do, right, Chris?
Indeed, yeah, indeed, man. That's gonna be a pivotal game. It's big for South Carolina, and the SEC is fine either way. On the flip side, that's a big game for the ACC. Yeah, if they can take down South Carolina, all of a sudden, you prove that, hey, we're a pretty damn good conference too. I mean, that's a big game for their conference.
Oh yeah, it is, Chris. And think about Florida State too. If you watch Florida State LSU this year, if I'm Greg Sankey, let me go see what Florida State LSU look like, right, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. Justin, I appreciate the call, my guy. Always a pleasure to chat with you. We'll get you on sometime again soon. Justin Martin, always a pleasure to hear from him. I want to go back to this comment really quickly. We're going to jump into a break in just a second. But back on this prediction thing. Madison Duncan, Chris, while you predict a 7-5 season, what bowl game do you predict we end up in? You know, Madison, I don't know. I'm not a huge bowl game projector guy. My guy Brad Crawford does that. College Football News does that. Others do that as well. But I want to go back to this for a second because, again, I see Lady Bree in the chat, and I'm totally fine being labeled as Chris the Realist Phillips. But I ask you this. If you're picking 10-2 this year, 9-3, when's the last time South Carolina exceeded your preseason pick? Has it ever happened? Let's jump to the lines.
Will from Dirty Myrtle.
Will, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. Just wanted to call real quick, and I know you're about to go on a break. I'll make it kind of quick. Just wanted to say, one, how exciting is it that football is finally back? We got some pigskin tonight to watch. That's awesome. And, just ready to see these newcomers, man. You get, tomorrow we're going to start getting reports on what Nick Harbor's doing, on, what Braswell's doing, all these question marks we got. It's just a real exciting time, man. We've been talking football for 8 months of the off season that is no off season, and it's finally here, and it's exciting and worried and all the different emotions going on, and just happy that we're finally going to start getting some feedback because, there's just, every season has its own life, but this one seems to be one of those seasons where there's so much there's optimistic feelings around, but there's also pessimistic feelings about the run game and everything else. So just excited to see the newcomers get in and do their thing, and Pup Howard and everybody else, all ththese freshmen, and that's all I had to say, brother. I'll hang up and listen.
Will, I appreciate the call, man. Really good stuff as always from our guy Will from Dirty Myrtle. Certainly, man. As fall camp gets going, that's we talked top storylines earlier in the week. That's a big one. These youngsters, these young guys that you're relying on to play, big time minutes for you this season and make a big time impact. Again, not just be nice role players and depth boosters. And you're relying on a lot of these freshmen to be impact players, impact guys. We'll see if they can do that. So going to be a lot of fun as fall camp gets going. Shane Beamer speaks to the media today at 3:00 to preview fall camp, talk all things Gamecocks football. CCM, if Beamer and Loggins are smart men, which I imagine they are, I'd say the offense looks a lot like it did for the last 3 games of last year. CCM, do we think it's that simple? Because CCM, when people say that, the offense looks like it does last 3 games of last year, I feel like what Gamecock fans are more trying to say is it looks more like the Tennessee game. Because the Clemson game, and I think that's a fair expectation. The Clemson game of last year, that offense, that's a fair expectation. South Carolina couldn't run the ball. Spencer Rattler put the team on his back. He almost lost the game a couple of times. Beamer ball was a huge factor. Defensive being opportunistic was a huge factor. And South Carolina found a way to win by 1 point. That recipe is not always going to work. So I think that's actually what South Carolina is going to be a lot of this year. They're probably going to play with that formula. Special teams will be consistent. Spencer Rattler will have his moments of brilliance marred with moments of inconsistency and mind-blowing turnovers. Hopefully less of them, but they're going to be there because he's a gunslinger. Offensive line's going to be kind of what it's been. Running game's going to be very hit or miss. And in games in which South Carolina can overcome that, they'll be good offensively. Better, at least. In games when they can't. I'll just tell you guys this as we go into a break. That's why I've said so many times, my prediction for Dowell Loggins is simply this. Is he an upgrade over Marcus Satterfield? Absolutely. There are many of you in the chat that would be an upgrade from Marcus Satterfield. You can't be worse than Marcus Satterfield was at South Carolina. But what I think people are going to realize at the end of this season, was Dowell Loggins an upgrade? Sure. But South Carolina's got to upgrade the talent on the offensive front. And they're doing that. They're doing that in a big way. But, guys, if you can't block, I don't care what the play call is. Doesn't matter. you're not going to see the results. And you can't always go back to blame the play call, blame the play call, blame. Sometimes the execution's just not there. If you don't have the Jimmies and Joes, guess what? There's no X's and O's that can overcome that. And so I think that's where the inconsistencies will come in. That being said, let's jump into another quick break, guys. On the side, we're going to take more of your questions, comments, calls, and more in our Q&A Power Hour here on this Thursday. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Watch your Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, August the 3rd, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Big news coming from Brett McMurphy via Twitter. He tweeted this out just a bit ago. Big Ten just trying to figure out financials at this point on Oregon and Washington, sources have told Action Network. Quote, there is no more research or information needed on Oregon and Washington, end quote. Big Ten sources said. Quote, we have everything we need, end quote. So there you go. Oregon, Washington to the Big Ten. They can figure it out financially, which there's a will, there's a way. They're going to get it done. So they're going to get it done. It's college football is just rapidly changing before our very eyes. For some reason, the comment just disappeared, but somebody said pub sub plus TSUS. Bro, you're going to make me hungry. I love a good pub sub. Love a good pub sub. So, I love how Brendan M. is behind on everything. So, he's commenting the expansion of the playoff. Are you really comparing this point to the NFL? There's so much more parity. I get that. I'm just simply stating. They do it with the playoff. Make it work well, too. Let's jump to the lines here.
Call from
Robbie Davis, Zaxby's Hall of Famer.
Robbie Davis, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good on this Thursday. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, my man. I appreciate you asking. What's going on?
I just wanted to say something about recruiting a little bit because you were talking about it earlier on in the show and then earlier on with Mark Ryan. I personally, to an extent, don't really care too much about recruiting because at the end of the day, I do not have control over who comes to South Carolina. You don't have control over who comes to South Carolina. No one has control over who comes to South Carolina to play football, okay? Now, don't misunderstand me, okay? I know recruiting is a big deal, okay? I know it is. But at the end of the day, you're going to get who you're going to get regardless of who it is. I don't care if it's a 5-star athlete or if it's a 4-star wide receiver or what have you, okay? At the end of the day, Beamer's job is to build a winning football program no matter who he gets when it comes to recruiting. Whenever we get a guy like a 5-star Nicholas Harver or what have you, just because he's a 5-star player does not always mean he's going to be a plug in immediately and he's going to freaking make defenses look like mincemeat. Okay. Beamer and the coaching staff have to figure out what he's really, really good at and put him in the best possible position to help to put him or anyone else in the best possible position to help the football team win football games. And that's
those points, Robbie, are all valid. I will say this though, because you're kind of, whether you're doing it intentionally or not, you're sort of echoing the commentary from the stars don't matter crowd when it comes to recruiting. And let me be very clear. Stars do matter. Mm-hmm. They absolutely do. Did you notice that we literally spent 20 minutes on the show celebrating and talking about a 5-star? We don't normally do that. We don't normally sit here and talk for 15.
I know we don't.
So if the stars didn't matter, whether it be a 3 or 4 or 5, the reactions would all be the same. Like, there's a reason you celebrate to a degree you do when you land a 5-star prospect versus when you land anybody else. And that's not to say, again, that some of those 4 stars may not be better, or, whatever, a 3-star exceed. But the teams that get the most of those 4 and 5 stars over a long period of time, they're the teams that win.
Yeah.
Bottom line. I mean, they're the teams that win.
Right.
Now, that's why I've said that for Shane Beamer to have success, to overachieve, to do what he's doing, and they've done this the first 2 years, but South Carolina's always recruited good enough. Never been an elite recruiting school. Excuse me. They've always recruited good enough. And you can win recruiting good enough. But you better be identifying talent. You better be developing it. You better be identifying talent. You better be developing it. That's the big kicker. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about, because as you improve and as you move up in the chain, move up in the ladder, and you get to competing for the SEC East. Well, now it's getting real serious. Going to Atlanta, winning the SEC. Those margins for error are razor thin. And the difference might be a player, maybe 2 players. And guess what? The team that's recruited and stacked more 4 and 5 stars over a 4, 5, 6, however long year period, that's the team that's going to make the play. That's the team that's going to have the depth. That's the team that, that's where recruiting really factors in. You got to have those guys, man. There's a reason why no teams are won a national title that's below that 50% blue chip ratio. And I know that they do that over at 24/7 and folks love it. But I will say that, I've heard people say that it's like a no-duh conversation. That was J.C. Sherbert, I believe, that said that, because it's like all the blue chip ratios telling me is that the team that has the most good players wins. Well, no shit. I mean, that is just, it's a no-brainer. But so it's not to say, nobody's going to come out and say if South Carolina finished 20th in recruiting and Florida's finishing 3rd, it's one of those things. It's hard for people to be honest about recruiting. It is. It's very, very hard. It's difficult. It's a slippery slope. Being critical about recruiting is not received well by college fans. But I've said it many times. I'll say it again. If South Carolina in 3, 4, 5 years, if they're playing in the SEC title, it's going to be because recruiting got elevated. Recruiting changed. Bottom line.
Yeah.
Either that, and recruiting already is elevated. The fact they're recruiting at 16th last year, if you finish top 15 this year, I think you're very well changing, because you've never recruited at a top 15 level annually. That's a really good place to start.
And personally, I think if we can get – go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, but the only way – if you're in Atlanta and that hasn't changed, the only rhyme or reason is that every 5-star you hit panned out in a huge way, and you've landed a bunch. See, South Carolina, we just think back late 2000s of what Spurrier did, the 5 stars of the Alshons and the Clownies and the Lattimores. But one of the biggest reasons that they succeeded the level they did, it felt like they hit on like every big 3-star guy. DJ Swearinger, Melvin Ingram, Cliff Matthews, I think, was a 3-star. Vic Hampton, Connor Shaw, Dylan Thompson. List goes on and on. But that's not the norm. It's not the norm. You know what I mean? So again,
it's not normal for a 3-star to become
right. And I'll say this, right? Like I'll say this.
Hero.
I'll say this. Like again, that doesn't mean that you pick up a commitment from a 3-star guy and you should throw dirt on him. He's going to be no good. He has no shot. But yeah, the teams that you want to be landing more 4 and 5 stars than 3 stars. And you know what? And especially in a day and age now where stars on everything, but dude, it's to such an exact science where we have social media, we have film on everybody. It's being covered like never before. The stars are more accurate now than they've ever been. So
I have
The blue
noticed
chip
that, yeah.
ratio,
I have
flipping
noticed that.
that is more important than anything for Beamer. Addressing areas of need, but flipping the blue chip ratio. If he can get South Carolina to a point
Right.
they've never been in blue chip ratio, I think unprecedented results will follow.
And I personally believe that if we can get to the point to where, like you said, if we're at if we can get to the point to where our recruiting classes are in the top 15 or right there at number 10, I think that would be a great thing for South Carolina. If we can get to that point to where our recruiting classes are between 15 to 10 ranked nationally, we could build off of that tremendously and get inside of the top 10 instead of just being on the outside looking in.
I think it's very doable. Listen, I mean, Shane Beamer has already really exceeded my expectations in recruiting through his first, going on his third year. I mean, I think it's possible. I think because of his infectious personality and attitude and belief in South Carolina and, the culture that he's built. We throw that culture word around, but I mean, dude, it's guys want to go play where it's fun, where they're cared about, where they matter. You know what I mean? They're not just a number. They are a human being. And Shane Beamer does a great job of that. Carolina's a fun place to play right now.
Treated like tackling dummies, basically.
Right. Carolina's a fun place to play right now. So, I mean, I have no doubt that, Shane Beamer can continue to overachieve. I say overachieve. Do great things in recruiting. I think to get to a top 10 level nationally, that you got to be winning. Just bottom line. To get that many good players, that's why winning 8 this year is so important. That's why winning 8, winning 9, showing that, like, dude, we're knocking on the door of the SEC East and being a big time program, and like we're not going away. Like Carolina football is here to stay, right? So, yeah. I mean, listen, I believe in Shane Beamer and recruiting, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And we're another day closer to the season opener, and the closer we get, the more excited I get. I mean, it's crazy that football season's about to be here, and like you said, we're going to have the Hall of Fame game tonight. And even though I don't pull for either one of the teams that are in the Hall of Fame game, I will be watching the Hall of Fame game for sure.
I mean, why not, man? Football's back on the tube.
That itch, like you said.
Yeah, football's back on the tube, man.
Just
So
because I want to scratch the itch,
Mm-hmm.
And my brother is the chaplain for James F. Burns High School. They have a scrimmage against Clover tonight, I think is what he said. Yeah, they have a scrimmage tonight against Clover. So yeah, my brother that's a pastor in the upstate, he's the chaplain for Burns. So that's pretty cool.
Very nice. Yeah. I mean, listen, the scrimmages for high school football are starting up, and just another sign that
the smell is
near.
in the smell of the grass and the craziness of football season is almost here.
Indeed. I can't wait, man. I know we're all really excited. So,
but that's all I got. You have a great rest of your Thursday, and go Gamecocks, and to heck with Clemson.
I love it, Robbie. Appreciate you, man. Always a pleasure to hear from you.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good one.
Take care. Great stuff from Robbie Davis. Folks talking about where they're sitting for UNC. Madison Duncan says, I'm in section couch, row home, seat mine. I love it. Let's get into this question. I saw this earlier. Really interesting stuff here. Let me see. Where can I find it? Here we go. Quentin Cade asked this earlier in the show. We were unable to get into it. Did Beamer hire Satterfield? If Beamer did, and now Logan sucks as an OC this year, because we do have the talent to score a bunch of points, is Beamer now on the hot seat to be fired? Just a thought. Quentin, I would say no. To be fired? No. And listen, it's a real thing at every SEC school. Like, welcome to the SEC. You have pressure. You don't want to be at a school where there isn't pressure. But to insinuate that, dude, I mean, even if the offense has a bad year, Even if Carolina goes 6-6. No, he's not on the hot seat to be fired. Will there be pressure? For sure. Absolutely. And yes, Shane Beamer did hire Marcus Satterfield. You might recall it was a situation in which he first got the job. He wanted to retain Mike Bobo. And Mike Bobo said, peace out, I'm gone. So he turned to Marcus Satterfield. So that was his hiring. That was the decision that Shane Beamer made. And is there pressure on the Loggins hire to work out? Hell yeah. I mean, we've talked about it over and over and over. We've talked about it over and over. And I see Austin Gregory saying Beamer hired Satterfield as a result of where the program was at when he took over. He and Sat have a personal relationship. Sat was in his wedding. Loggins was his first choice. Austin, I hear what you're saying, and you might be right, but let's not make any excuses, because it sounds like you're trying to make an excuse for Beamer that, well, it really wasn't his fault. He hired him. Bottom line, point blank in the story. He hired him. Doesn't matter whether you know, what position he's in. He hired him. Could have called anybody. He hired Marcus Satterfield. I love Shane Beamer, but let's not get into this whole like, well, it actually wasn't his fault. No, he hired him. Bottom line, hired him. No matter who was hired at OC, there would have been pressure, and there would be pressure for the offense to click into work. In the bottom line. I mean, it doesn't matter. Even if Garrett Riley was the guy, there'd be pressure. But to the point of folks calling for Shane Beamer's job, no. But you know, Quentin, I'm not going to scoff at you like some might, because I recall a time not so long ago, aka last year, when South Carolina lost 38-6 to Florida and Marcus Satterfield was still employed. You guys heard it too, the rumblings about, well, I mean, I don't know if Beamer's the guy for the job. He can't make a change at OC. Like, and I see Brendan M commenting in the Discord. Reminder that Sat was not Beamer's first choice or his second. He was behind both Loggins and Bobo. Fine. Fair enough. Based off of what we know, you are correct. But he was hired either way. Fair or unfair, it's on your record. It's on your record. So, and I mean, here's the thing. He may have been his third choice, but I mean, Shane Beamer must have believed in it if he brought him back after year one. I mean, he didn't fire him after year one. He didn't fire him early in the season last year. It took getting embarrassed on national TV to finally do something. And that's a convo for another day. We've exhausted it. But like, that is one of those mysteries that will live on forever for me. Why did it take so long? Why? You know, like, I think it was evident after Georgia State. How about after Georgia? How about after Charlotte and SC State? For the love of God, how about Mizzou? And that's one, I don't care how garnet your glasses are. You can't explain that to me. There's no logical explanation. I'll never forget the Sunday after the Mizzou game. I'm out of town that day, and I will never forget Shane Beamer going on his Sunday teleconference and saying, we're making no changes at OC. No changes to play calling, anything. And dude, the Discord went insane. I thought Luke RJ was going to give up being a Gamecock fan. For those of you who know who he is. Social media went ballistic. How was that not the game that called for the change? I don't know. Either way, listen, the change was made, all good. I understand, Brendan, by the way, I wasn't calling for Sat to be fired after year one. I wasn't. I'm just saying, though, that, I mean, I think Beamer had Sat's back. I think to say that he didn't have his back and that Beamer was just stuck in a situation, well, now I think you're questioning Shane Beamer's integrity. I think Shane Beamer's as real as they come. He's authentic. He's genuine. I think he really authentically, genuinely believed that Marcus Satterfield was going to work. I don't think Shane Beamer would have brought somebody in he didn't think could work. I don't think he brings him back for year 2 if he didn't think he could work. So, I listen, Sat may have been the best of a bad situation, but he was Beamer's choice. And so to insinuate that he wasn't Beamer's choice, I don't think it's accurate. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. Let's turn up the phone lines here.
Call from
Dale from East Tennessee.
Dale, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, man, I got a few things to say, but first off, I got to put something under the rug with you.
What's going on?
You, Chris. I thought you were my boy, man.
Explain.
Oh, you know what I'm talking about, man. What's this I'm hearing where Rebecca's out here messaging me, telling me she's meeting up with you in Columbia, but you wouldn't hang out with me on your way to Nashville, man. That hurts deep.
I got to say, apparently there have been plans made for me that I was unaware of.
Man, it just hurts me deep, man. I respect you, and I call you a friend, and then I hear that, man, and it's just like salt in the wounds,
Dale, I don't know what to tell you, man. Hey, that was a business trip when I couldn't see you that one time, and I'm not even in Columbia, my man. So I don't think we'll be linking up with Rebecca anytime soon.
Man, you better not, man. You know that saying. I ain't gonna say it on the line, but bros,
Honestly, guys, I'm just not feeling Dale today, and we got to jump into a break anyways. Sucks to suck. 843-790-3377. Your questions, comments, calls, and more on the side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
That's your Dougie hoe.
What's up, guys? We're back. Final 7 minutes or so in the Daily Crow, taking your questions, comments, calls, 843-790-3377. Again, guys, I really just wasn't feeling BDD today. He did call back in, though, and leave a voicemail for us. So let's check out what Dale's got to say. Again, some days you're in the mood, and some days you're not. We got a lot of good questions in here. I don't feel like dealing with Dale's nonsense. Let's see what he's got, though.
Man, I'm just trying to figure out why you hung up on me, man. You said it was cool, and then you gonna hang up. I just don't understand. And if you don't tell Zach Sauce Bilbo Baggins to stop poking a bear or whatever people's tagging me in on Twitter, what bear? A Build-A-Bear? Come on, man, that ain't a thing. And that John Edward Kruger, I mean, you can tell he's the type of guy that goes to Hooters for the food, man. And I'm going to leave it at that. Goes with his dad and sits at the bar and then eats the food. Come on, man. You got to call me back or something.
Oh, God. You see what I'm saying? Some of the silliness. Some of the foolishness. Either way, let's get back into your questions here. Travie, Clayton White's going to be scrutinized this year if we don't fix the run defense. I mean, that's a given. Run defense got to improve. No doubt. No doubt. Madison, why the hell are folks talking about getting fired? We have 30 days before kickoff this season. Get positive. New year. I mean, listen, Madison, everybody's open to their own opinions, questions, whatever. Bruin Nation says if he'd have brought Satterfield back after the Tennessee and Clemson games after sucking ass all year, the fans would be looking for joy right now instead of having optimism. Yeah, I Bruin Nation, let me give you a hot take, okay? I'm going to give you a hot take. When you speak for the masses, sure. Yeah, I think the masses, like the approval rating wouldn't be high. I think that there's more optimism right now with new blood, with Dowell Loggins, than there would have been had Satterfield returned. But if Satterfield would have returned after the end of the season and Shane Beamer would have come out and said, we made some adjustments, we feel as if Marcus Satterfield, keeping him here is the best thing for us to continue that success. Bruin Nation, you know as well as I do, Gamecock fans would have been on board. Absolutely. And if I would have been sitting here saying, hey, this is a make or break year for Sat, either the offense is good or they got to fire him, I'd be labeled as negative. I'd be labeled as hating. I'd be labeled as, you know it's true. You know it's true. So the optimism is greater with Dowell Loggins. I think there'd still be optimism with Satterfield, believe it or not. At least from the people that are optimistic no matter what. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm just saying that, like, I don't think it'd be doom and gloom. Everybody's picking 5 and 7. Like, I don't see that. I don't think so. I really don't. I think people would have found a way to spin themselves into believing that, well, you know what? Like, Sat turned over a new leaf. It wasn't all his fault. I don't know. Just my take, just my opinion, Bruin Nation. I think there would have been a large majority that, or, you know, a large number that would have said, you know what? Because, I mean, the majority that listen, and there's nothing wrong with it, guys. The majority I'm talking about, though, is if Shane Beamer came on his presser today and said, guys, the sky is green. Those people would say, well, the sky is green because Shane Beamer said it was so. You know what I mean? Like, and God bless him. God bless him. But so anyways, to your point, yes, I think with the majority, though, there's certainly more optimism with Dowell Loggins at OC than there would have been otherwise had Sat been retained. That feels like it's obvious. Bruin Nation, that feels like it's obvious, but I don't think it's as obvious as It should be. I don't know. Anyways, guys, this show has been electric today, by the way. Really, truly. It's been a lot of fun. Ryan Cothran, appreciate you tuning in. All those who are tuning in that are new, by the way, I feel like you're going to see people kind of trickle in as we get closer to kickoff, which, hey, good on you. Appreciate you. Glad to have you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live and we drop new video content. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, The Spurs Up Show on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review, by the way. Rate the show, review it, whatever. Tell us what you like, don't like, whatever. Appreciate all the feedback. And, stay tuned for all the content as well. My guy Austin Gregory asked, will we be live for the Shane Beamer presser? No, we will not. I'm going to jump off here. We're going to go tune into that and hear everything that Shane Beamer has to say. Join the Big Cock Club for sure. We'll be in there chatting about it, conversating, what have you. And I feel like maybe there was one other thing I wanted to get into. No, I don't think so. Okay, cool, guys. We're going to go ahead and end the show now because, again, Shane Beamer going live within the next minute. So we're going to go ahead and jump off here again, guys. Thank you all so much. I want to say thank you to David Nuno of Texags, Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate, all you guys for tuning in as well and making this an electric TDC here on this Thursday. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.